Good evening. Wrong thing. Through the prayers of Holy Fathers of Jesus Christ, our God of mercy, us and save us. Amen. For those new here, my name is Father Joseph Swaden. I've worked in Orthodox Apologetics since 1998, and I'm the founder of NFTU, True Orthodox and Ecumenical News, since 2004. We've been in the apologetic space on Facebook since 2016 and on YouTube since 2018. And if you appreciate what we do here, please like and subscribe. Today we do our live Q&A session where you can get your questions answered live, as well as member-requested video reviews. So let's get started. And as always, if you want to jump on the stream to ask a question, just click the link at the top of the chat, or you can add comments at afrosinoscafe.com in the chat, or send a super chat or become a member. Let's get started here. Let's see what we've got. May God bless everyone watching. Let me see here. That intro music is generic. Hopefully one day I will come up with something a little bit better, but I'm glad people like it, which means I can probably use it again. Good evening to everybody on the stream today. And so let's get started. All right, so I'm going to be looking around for some questions. We did a show on Friday. That kind of popped up because I realized we hadn't answered Michael Lofton's book. But other than that, it's been relatively straightforward or quiet. Give me a moment. Let me see. I have an interesting exchange going on right now on Twitter where somebody is asking the question. My favorite question for old calendarists is, what about the Georgians, Bulgarians, and Macedonians? They're not in the World Council of Churches, and they're on the old calendar. None of them will ever give a solid answer. So I gave him a solid answer. I explained that the Georgians and Bulgarians left the WCC in 1997 to avoid the break their ecumenism was causing, and it worked well for Georgia, not for Bulgaria. And ecumenists are waiting for a leader to die, and the Macedonians have participated in ecumenical activities the whole time. And he said, you didn't say, he wrote back, you didn't say if they have grace or not. Well, you didn't ask. So, in any case, let's see here. Let's continue on. Again, if you want to jump on and make comments that can be read live on the screen, go to frosinoscafe.com. And you can always jump in there, and that is one thing to do. You may have noticed I've started the marquee scrolling already, asking for support. That is actually extremely important. If I didn't emphasize it enough at the end of the month, I guess I will try to emphasize a little harder because it is the beginning of the month. We are completely supported by our listeners, our friends, our supporters, our community. There ain't nothing else. Like, I mean, occasionally I get a check from YouTube for $100, and that's it. And it doesn't come every month, and I don't think it's coming this month. So, just really wanted to let you know, if you can, let me know what you can do. For those of you who have been praying for my family in the hospital, glory to God, they are out of the hospital. Things are better. And we are working with what we can to make the situation as positive as possible. Let me see here. We continue on. So that was the main question I had right now that somebody gave me. Somebody else asked, but I invited them onto the stream. I don't know if they will do it. For the record, anyone can jump on the stream right now just by clicking on the link and in white at the top of the chat. So please feel free. If you have a live question you want to ask, that's what we're here for. We've noticed it's been a bit of a downturn on questions lately, and I think to some degree that is because of the fact that really I think people are getting more and more kind of offended, or getting scared of the reality. We've got someone coming on. Looks like Saba. Hopefully Saba has a question. And Wazna. Hello, Saba. Greetings. God bless you.
Hello.
So, let me see here. We have a question from Wazna. What is your opinion on who are the sons of God that are in Genesis? I know that there are saints that are divided on the correct interpretation of the text. Yeah, that's one of those open ones. I feel like, are you referring to the Nephilim, or are you referring, like, I'm curious as to, the sons of God you're referring to in Genesis. Like, what part of Genesis are we talking
I think he's talking about, I think it's, what is it, Genesis 6:14.
Yeah. All right,
yes,
I'll take
most
a
of
look.
the
He did add,
I know most of the Holy
Genesis 6,
Fathers. Yeah. Most of the Holy Fathers, like St. John Chrysostom, says that the sons of men were descendants of Cain, and sons of God were the descendants of Seth. Father Seraphim Slobodowski in the Law of God says this as well. Father John Cassian, St. John Cassian in the conferences says this as well. I don't think they were half demons.
Yeah, that's
Enoch
let me see
claim.
here. Yeah, that's, let me see here. Yeah, that's when, okay. Human beings beget the sons of God. Yeah, okay. They're the most common view among the fathers is sons of Seth. The minority view is that they actually were human angel hybrids, but that's pretty much a minority opinion. I don't think it matters too much because, if I remember correctly, that's before the flood, and they were all destroyed. Let me see here. That I was reading a Vladimir Moss article on genetics and the Antichrist. He implied that Satan will try to imitate the incarnation, but he will fail. Yeah, well, they have a lot of technology where it would be very possible, if you're careful enough in terms of hiding things, to fake a virgin birth simply through the technology we have for IVF and other things. So, yeah.
Well, they did this with a sheep. They claimed that they had a sheep or something that gave birth, but was still a virgin, and they said, "Oh, it's through the miracles of science and whatnot." I don't know I think it was different than like just a C-section, but that's something they'll do if they don't already claim something like that.
Reader John has joined as a member. Thank you very much, Reader John. We really appreciate it. That gives you automatic, YouTube commenting privilege here without jumping on the cafe chat, which I highly recommend, by the way. The cafe is growing very quickly. So please, if you haven't joined the cafe yet, please do so. It may take me a while to approve you. We have been attacked nonstop by spam bots. We're now at around 150 spam bots I have to contend with. Well, 150 spam registrations that I have to take out. I have to manually review them, which is a pain, but the satisfaction I derive from knowing that one or two bad actors, most likely in Russia, because a lot of them are Russian email addresses, I enjoy knowing that they are reading the site, and except for the few that they might have gotten in during the early registration, they are failing miserably at getting their spam across. We have taken out a couple of spams in the past week. We take them out quickly, they disappear quickly, and that's the last of them. But my goal is to make sure that, we can redevelop the cafe as a community. I know that you, Sava, contribute quite a bit of information there, as does Unseen Warfare and Aish and a few other people who are, keeping it together and kind of building it up. And we're going to keep trying to improve. Hopefully, if we get the higher level chat working, it's going to be quite an amazing feat. So we'll see. God willing, we'll see. But again, if anyone has comments or questions, or they want to join on, Sava, what was on your mind today?
Oh yes, the one question I had. Do you know anything about this Archbishop Viktor Pivovarov in Sloviansk? He's the head of one of these centers.
Yes, I know a little bit about him. He runs kind of an apocalyptic site in Russia. He's actually been interviewed by this Radio Free Europe types. I know they did an interview with him a few years ago, but he remains fairly isolated with his flock. They do have a nice church there, but I get the impression that he doesn't really. He's not very active. I think he was part of the Damascene group at one point, and I think Metropolitan Damascene has passed on, so I'm not even sure who's in charge there. But there's a number of bishops.
They're read by this Vladika Stefan. Okay. I don't know anything about them, but they have two bishops in Russia.
Okay, yeah, because I know that occasionally they'll reach out to Archbishop Victor and put up his stuff, and so they have kind of a tenuous relationship with him. But I mean, that's kind of the relationship that a lot of different Russian groups have, just because of everything from persecution to concerns with communion, etc. Father Antonios, good evening, and thank you for being here. So yeah, that is definitely he's an interesting person, to say the least. I remember when I was in Russia, he was actually very well known because he had some Cossack groups and a couple of Cossack battalions kind of supporting him. So he would do large processions. But I think those days, I'm not sure how it's affected him since. We'll see. Well, I mean, I've never heard anything about him that's heretical. So, I have no problem with him. I think that especially 20 years ago, it was tempting to see everything as apocalyptic. And it's not now. It's bad. I mean, that's, I'm not going to say the state of Orthodoxy is fantastic right now. It's certainly not. Sunrise says, evening, Father, how are you? Good evening. Father Boniface, greetings. It's nice to see everyone here. And we're doing our live Q&A session. So if you talk to a friend and you want to get them on and you want to make them ask hard questions, I'm looking for hard questions, as always, not afraid of them. We're always looking for really confusing things. Because that's what this is kind of for. It's to make it easier and clearer that Orthodoxy is the true faith, that the true Orthodox are preserving Orthodoxy, and it's a simple matter of trying to find things. Yeah, this is a good point. Maybe his views regarding things being apocalyptic could be from his experience as a Russian. I think that's a very, very valid point. If you had gone through what they had gone through for the better part of 100 years, it's really, really easy to be apocalyptic. I mean, there are still, passportless groups even now. And they'll point to things that we talk about in reality, like RFIDs and so on and so forth, that apparently people are trying to not take as seriously, and they really should. But let me see here. Alexander Pashnitsky writes, good evening, Father. Good evening, Saba. Any advice on gaining courage and finally going to war with your passions rather than being defeated each time? Smoking. Oh, well, I can kind of sympathize with that one. In all honesty, it depends on the person, but you should try to do something. If you feel like you're too afraid to try to just quit, then try getting the gum or try getting the patches. Call your doctor. Tell them what you're talking about. See if you're ready to do that. A lot of people have had success with cold turkey, but it is considered hard. If you are looking at a cold turkey method, probably I would say Alan Carr's Easy Way is effective. I have beaten smoking once or twice with that.
I used to
it's
smoke.
It's just a matter of yeah. And how did you quit?
And I did it the cold turkey way, and it was not very pleasant. But also, to be fair, it wasn't a big thing for me. I smoked, but it wasn't. I didn't smoke every day, like every other day, and I did the paid tobacco, and I'm so glad I quit that. But cold turkey is probably something that's worth trying. If that doesn't work, then try the other methods. That's what I've heard most people that really got into it. That's what they did.
Well, that's it's an interesting point, because as I mentioned, I struggled with this myself, and I feel like I'm on the almost end of it. But in talking to my doctor, one thing he pointed out is that the average smoker actually goes through 7 full quitting attempts before successfully beating it.
Yes.
So it's not just
yes. Matushka Maria Shishkov in New Jersey, she spent, I don't even know how many decades trying to quit smoking.
It's hard.
Oh yeah, it's very hard. She talks about it. I think she only quit smoking like in the 1990s, but she had been smoking basically her entire life to that point.
Yeah, it's not easy. So trust me, you have our sympathies, you have our prayers, Alexander. But the one thing you shouldn't do is don't feel afraid. There's nothing wrong with failing because you can always get up and try again. And you'll never die from not smoking. So give it a try. Zena, this is Reader John says cold turkey after being a tobacco pipe smoker for a long time. I feel like tobacco pipe smokers, I don't know, maybe I'm not being fair. I just think that cigarette addicts are just much more persistent. But yeah, a lot of people I know do smoke pipes, and yeah. And then
I recommend
Wazner writes, well, I'm just going to read this first. Wazner says, cold turkey, I quit right before I left the army. So there you go. A lot of people are recommending cold turkey tonight.
Yes, there's two things.
What were you saying?
And, ask for the intercessions of St. John the Kronstadt. I think he suffered from tobacco addiction when he was a young man. I know he actually did a very successful anti-smoking campaign in Kronstadt as a priest. And then something that I could recommend from one of our dear sisters here in Louisiana, she recommends clove oil. I personally used it myself whenever I would get the occasional urge to smoke, and it works very well.
All right. Well, that's a great option. Also, I have never tried that, so I don't know. Jason Allen says, try quitting coffee. No. Sunrise asked if I've seen Roots of Orthodoxy's video about post-schism developments in the West. I have, and I actually was mentioning to Vladimir Enoch if we were going to do something like that on his channel because it's so topically centered. John Lennon did cold turkey. Okay, yes, he did, but that was a different kind of quitting.
Well,
John points out, don't vape, not worth inhaling unknown AIDS chemicals. Come again? What? Oh, you're broken up. You're like all over the place, Saba.
No,
didn't Raphael of Brooklyn smoke? Very possible that the Holy Bishop Raphael of Brooklyn smoked. Also, the Tsar Martyr Nicholas smoked. I'm not saying that smoking is an awful, like it's an evil sin. What I'm saying is it's not healthy. And I know as somebody who struggles with it myself, it's not healthy. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I'm not saying it's not worth inhaling unknown AIDS chemicals into the body. I agree with you on vapes in terms of there being often you don't know what's in them. I'm ideally vapes should have something like a base like propylene glycol and flavoring, and that's it. I'm not a big fan of the modern common term of AIDS chemicals, where we just assume that everything that's chemical that we don't know is probably AIDS. But outside of that, yeah, totally, I get that. John MC, my first direct experience, finally quit after the third attempt. Lots of Worcester cold turkey lasted 2-3 weeks. Keep busy, get exercise, drink water, black coffee or tea, and attend church as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, if you're that busy and you've got that much of a change in your life, it can actually be very easy to fix that. Definitely. Definitely. So as to Roots of Orthodoxy's question, God willing, we'll try to cover that. Let me see here. Reader John asks, doesn't the whole state of New Jersey smell like marijuana now? Not in the rural areas. Like the Abbey is in New Jersey. I would say most of the area around it just smelled like trees. But I mean, in the cities, in any city at this point, I mean, even Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, you get to the downtowns where people are just hanging around outside the stores. Yeah, it does. Or it smells like something similar. And it doesn't, it's especially bad in Northeast PA because we have actual skunks. So you have to play guess the odor, where it could be like either a skunk or an actual, weed thing. If tobacco has chemicals, detox the chemicals. Yeah, that's doable as well. Absolutely. And let me think here if anyone had other questions. I know I was asked, I think it was by, somebody had asked me, actually a couple of people have brought this up to me, and they're asking what happened to Vladimir Moss's website. It would appear that his website's disappeared. He's not really talking to anyone. I am not, Vladimir Moss's, how do I put this? I'm not his caretaker or even a particularly great fan. Okay, I don't know. Theodore just put up a link to something. I'm not sure what it is. I will check. Give me a moment. IBB Co. S5. Hold on. All right. Open link in new tab. And it is apparently some kind of image. I don't know what it is. I don't have to put it on screen until I know what it is. But it died. Whatever you put up didn't work. I'm sorry, Theodore. Try to send it again using a different file format so it shows up. I have no idea what synod it's referring to. I'd have to look. Let me... Hold on one second. Apparently the lovely people on the Twitter who want to ask questions don't want to. They don't seem to respect that I just said I have a live stream going and they're welcome to join. So I'm gonna say this again. I am live now, and you can come and ask your question. So be quiet. I hate when that happens, and it drives me nuts. Okay, so we're going to try this again. Let's see if I can pull this up. Untitled 123 JPEG. We're waiting. And we're waiting. Okay, so let me switch over, and I will show everyone what we are talking about here. Okay, there we go. Let's see. It appears, let me switch to the tab. Share this tab instead. In 1997, the Italo-Greeks once again looked to Greece for assistance, having been turned away by both Constantinople and Jerusalem, and founded in the Old Calendar Synod of Archbishop Timotheos Athanasiou. Contact was made with the Archbishop in late 1995, and he developed a relationship between the Archbishop and Subdeacon Stephen. Oh, okay. In 1996, a petition was submitted to Archbishop Timotheos and his synod, requesting the ordination of Subdeacon Stephen to the diaconate and priesthood, blah, blah. And he was made a bishop for this group. Okay, so let me switch this back. Thank you for that. The person that he is referring to, hold on. I thought someone else joined. The person that he is referring to in that question, Timotheos Athanasiou, is not he is not a bishop that came from the true Orthodox of Greece, either the Matthewites or the Florinites. In fact, his kind of history is unique. He was descended from a bishop that was made by 5 independent American bishops who got together in, I believe it's Springfield, Massachusetts, and they decided, this was 1955 or something, so it wasn't that time period. They decided they were going to create an Old Calendar Greek bishop, and these were groups ranging from the Moscow Patriarchate of Springfield, which was a thing, to I don't want to say Theophan Noli was involved personally, but one of the bishops he made might have been. A bunch of unique individuals raised this Bishop Joachim Suris. And Joachim Suris was the one who then went to establish his own Greek synod. And they basically were never taken seriously by the other Old Calendarists because of their history. Just 5 randos made him a bishop. And then basically he made Timotheos Athanasiou. They also made another group in Hawaii that I attempted to once many years ago reach out to get some more information about Timotheus's background and the whole Joachim Suris thing, because there's so little known about him, but I never got a response. As for Archbishop Stephen Anea, okay. Oh, wow. Greetings. May God bless you. Dan, you're on live. If you want to unmute, we are here for questions. Dan was actually asking me questions on Twitter, and so I am hoping he can ask here because he wants to, he wants answers on some serious issues. So whenever you're ready, Dan, ask your question. You have to unmute yourself, though.
Oh, fun. Who are you in communion with?
I myself am under Metropolitan John of New York and New Jersey of the Autonomous Metropolia. We are in communion with our sister churches in Greece and Russia, in Avlona and in Moscow, as well. Oh, no, not this again. As well as, give me a moment. Sorry, sometimes the cafes can be kind of wonky. But, yeah. And so our Archbishop Cherubim in Avlona, Greece, Archbishop Seraphim of Moscow, and there are other smaller synods in a couple of other countries that are not the major true Orthodox synods of those particular countries. Why do you ask?
Just curious, really, as someone in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America.
Okay. I think that's a fair question. In terms of full size, I would say that, because it seemed like, I want to say it was Patrick Trulia who was asking earlier. He was trying to figure out, are we in communion with the largest true Orthodox group? Technically, we don't refer to ourselves as groups, but as churches proper. And it's difficult to say who the largest true Orthodox group, quote unquote, is. In Greece, for example, the largest true Orthodox synod would be that of Archbishop Kalinikos, but that doesn't mean he's the largest in the world. The Russian true Orthodox are all considerably larger, with numbers in the hundreds of thousands and even up to 1 million individually. So these are not small groupings by any means. And then on top of that, there was less confusion in Bulgaria, where the true Orthodox of Bulgaria comprise something like 2 million people or 3 million people, and in Romania, where again they comprise like 2 to 3 million people again, and those groups could technically be bigger than any single Greek or Russian group, but they're not bigger than all of them combined. So that's where you have to kind of look at it from there. That yes, the true Orthodox in certain countries are divided, but that doesn't necessarily give you an indication of size itself. Doesn't give you an indication of how strong or unified that they are. All their confession of faith is the same. Often things can be reduced to personal attacks and technicalities. I hope that answers your question. I'm sure you're familiar with your own. I mean, what did you said you were with the Greek Archdiocese, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now, do you know the history of the Greek Archdiocese?
I do know the history of the Greek Archdiocese.
Okay. How did it come into existence?
Specifically, off the top of my head, I know that it was originally started by Greek immigrants and then transferred to the Ecumenical Patriarchate.
When did that happen?
I don't remember.
I can tell you. It actually happened when Meletius Metaxakis was the Ecumenical Patriarch, the one who introduced the new calendar and Ecumenism and all the heresy. He actually moved the jurisdiction of the parishes in America that were actually under the Church of Greece to his own as effectively a funding mechanism, which is why the Greek Archdiocese is directly under Constantinople.
Now that you say it, I remember it. Yeah. Patriarch Meletios Metaxakis definitely is one of the hardest patriarchs to top in terms of errors.
In what? You broke up.
In terms of his errors, he is one that
heresies.
is hard to top.
Well, yeah, not only his heresies, but his desire for power. I mean, he literally was trying to go from patriarchate to patriarchate and died before he could try to get elected as Patriarch of Jerusalem. Like, he literally wanted to violate the canons. He openly wanted to change the calendar so that we could celebrate with the Anglicans, and wanted to have, ultimately he was part of the Anglican program to introduce ecumenism into Orthodoxy. And that kind of led to the changing of the calendar in Greece in 1924. Oh, hey, someone else popped up. Welcome, Phil with Skill. Is he a friend of yours, Dan? Or
He is, yes. He is the one that introduced me to Orthodoxy.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, welcome, Phil. Whenever you want to ask a question, me and Sav are here waiting. Just unleash your mic.
Sounds good.
All right. So, So basically, the Greek Archdiocese, as it stands, was not canonically erected. It wasn't under the Church of Greece as it should have been originally, and ultimately has been a tool of heresy. And you don't even have to. I'm sure you know about the CIA stuff. If you ever watch Jay Dyer, he talks a lot about that. But this is all documentable stuff. So the point is, was something holding you back? Like, do you have a GOC church near you?
We don't. We do have an old calendarist near us, but we can't figure out who the bishop is.
Which
Okay.
church would it be?
In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Can I get a repeat on that?
Yeah, you broke up.
So we have an old calendarist near us, but we don't know who it's under. They say that they're Greek, but it says that they're true Orthodox. So we're a little confused as to who the bishop is.
The overwhelming majority, and there's only a couple of exceptions. Okay, so what city is it by any chance?
It's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Those, I believe, are actually Matthewites, if I remember correctly, and they are part of the. I want to say, what's the name of it? Hold on, I'd have to look it up. Let me see if I can find it.
They're not with Stephanos, are they?
No, they're not with Stephanos, and they're not with Kyrikos either. They're with the ones that the group of the five, the God the Father icon.
Those people. Okay, I didn't know those people were still around.
Yeah, well, they have a church in Philadelphia, and they have for a long time. That's why I asked real quick, and I knew who it was. From what I understand, I've heard that there's a lot of people who are very, actually kind of nice. I've heard positive things. So they would be under one of the Matthewite synods. The Matthewites are kind of unique in that they're kind of like they've kind of broke off from the Floronites, and they've kind of been on their own for a while, but they do have some solid churches and people. Like, I don't think that, things would go wrong if that was your closest local church. I wouldn't recommend against it. And Phil, what was your question?
Did Dan already ask about the Macedonian?
Gregor answered it.
Huh? There's a question about the Macedonians, the Georgians, and the Bulgarians, how I believe they're not under the World Council churches. What's your stance and view on them? And are you in communion with them? Would you commune them?
No, there was. Well, I'm going to explain. First off, I actually first became Orthodox in 1997, so I ended up seeing these events play out live. And what I saw was that they're kind of, first off, Patriarch Leo was actually a past president of the World Council of Churches. And so Bulgaria was also heavily involved in the World Council of Churches. When they left, the reason that they left, and I can tell you this from experience, was because there were organized parties that were planning to separate from them, which would have altered the course of the churches forever. It would have literally changed. It could have been a true Orthodox majority in Georgia and Bulgaria at the time. If they had done that, that's what scared them. That's why they pulled out. Since then, obviously, Georgia has, at its lower levels, all the way to the Episcopal level, has been working on ecumenism, while Patriarch Leo has been personally against it, and they're waiting for him to die. At the Bulgarian level, as much as we might like the new guy that they've put in there, first off, there were true Orthodox there the whole time, so there's no point in going to the new calendar Bulgarians. But even more importantly, they were all exposed as KGB agents about 10 years ago. So since there's already a true Orthodox Bulgarian church, there's no logical reason for us to want to try to make a deal with people who clearly are half and half in ecumenism and are compromised in other ways that we're not even considering. As for the Macedonians, you guys didn't recognize them until 2 years ago, so you have nothing to say to us. So that's what I would say there. I think that's fair, don't you?
So, I mean, is your position then just that they were once in ecumenism?
Come again?
And that's... I'm sorry?
You broke up. You said your position is that we're ecumenism?
Yeah, is your position that they were once in ecumenism?
Oh, they were
and
heavily
now they're no
involved.
longer?
No, my position is that they were heavily involved in ecumenism, that the 1997 moves were to keep their churches from falling apart, but were not done in good faith, and that they're still, the Bulgarians are, and the Georgians even more, or to a larger degree, are still working in ecumenical models. In the case of Georgia, they're just waiting for Patriarch Ali to die so they can elect a new and more ecumenical patriarch, and they'll go right back in.
Well, the Bulgarians, they're in communion. They're in another group. They're not in the WCC, but they did join like this CCT. It's the same thing that the Antiochians are part of.
Christian churches together. I remember that. I didn't study the Bulgarian case too well, but that's crazy. Because the Antiochians technically left the National Council of Churches also, but they left because they were too liberal. And so they were like, we'll just join a conservative ecumenical group, and they joined Christian churches together, which I guess I didn't know this, but Sava, more eagle-eyed than I was, noted that they just joined a different ecumenical group. So it's much more Republican, but it's still ecumenist.
And also with the Bulgarians, they noticed that a lot of the bishops currently in the synod, they were part of the alternative synod that existed in the 1990s and early 2000s. That was part of the KGB agents, all of them being exposed as KGB. A bunch of them got upset, left. And those people were openly in communion with old Catholics, and they were also trying to go into communion with some weird Anglican group. And those people are now bishops in the synod of the Bulgarian church, and they never repented of that. They just said, oh, well, and some of them even still hang out with the old Catholics. They're not allowed to commune anymore. But there's bishops currently in the Bulgarian church who were openly in communion with old Catholics. So it's not that they were once involved in ecumenism, they're still involved in it.
Yeah. Also, for Dan, I would recommend, I actually do know people in our synod in Philadelphia who sometimes commute to the Abbey. So if you are interested in that, even though the Abbey is Western Rite, you can see a priesthood Western Rite, and maybe you can even get a ride. So it's something to consider. But other than that, did either you, Dan, or you, Phil, have any other questions?
I just wanted to ask one other thing. So, okay, suppose I have a good metropolitan who's not an ecumenist, who's not... Let's say
you don't have a good metropolitan who's not an ecumenist. That's not honest.
I'm sorry?
But even if he would still be in communion with ecumenists.
Right, yeah. Where is this magical non-ecumenist metropolitan?
I'm asking a hypothetical. Suppose my metropolitan, he's in Go Arch, but he's a very conservative man. He's very against ecumenism. Yeah. Here's
the problem. And this is a problem I have with hypotheticals, and I know hypotheticals are used to validate arguments. My answer would sound ridiculous because to me the hypothetical sounds ridiculous, and I'll explain why. My answer to the hypothetical of an anti-ecumenist metropolitan in the Greek Archdiocese is that the second he proclaimed against ecumenism, he would be called to Constantinople and would be deposed and probably killed. That's my answer to that hypothetical. Why would I pick such a bizarre and long answer to that? Simple. The Greek Archdiocese, as well as the Ecumenical Patriarchate, have filters, ways to keep out potential troublemakers, rabble rousers. Those people go through obedience tests to make sure they are really committed to the cause of ecumenism before they ever make it to archpriest, mitred archpriest, or archimandrite. Before that ever happens, you have to have paid the toll a few times. So the chances of that happening are statistically so low that, yeah, I can accept your hypothetical, but it's just that it would be one where if it was suddenly discovered, they would try to depose him and remove him immediately.
Well, suppose he just wasn't outspoken about it.
Okay, that makes no sense.
Like, suppose he's not actively throwing out anathemas to the patriarch and to this metropolitan and that person there. He's just keeping his flock. Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, he's lying to his brother bishops.
I'm not saying he's lying. I'm just saying he's focused on he's focused on his metropolis. He's not sending out encyclicals saying, yeah, the patriarch's a heretic, we all got to leave him. He's just dealing with his flock. He's avoiding as much ecumenism as he can within his flock, and he's just rightly dividing, rightly teaching. Why should someone leave that type of bishop if they have him?
Because the Holy Fathers say that you're not rightly dividing the word of truth by staying in communion with heretics. The Holy Fathers give us a universal example that we must flee heretics. That is preserving the Orthodox Church and the Orthodox faith and rightly dividing the word of truth.
So you're saying, so that metropolitan, in staying under like the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, is himself in some sort of heresy or canonical violation by staying.
Well, when you're commune with someone, you are recognizing the orthodoxy. This hypothetical is like saying if I was under the Pope of Rome, but I was fully Orthodox or rejected the filioque, there might not be a unionate then. Because a lot of unionates reject the filioque and they accept polymism and they accept Orthodox saints. No, they're still under the Pope of Rome, who was a heretic.
Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, I guess, but the Pope of Rome is like, he kind of has more powers. He's the infallible guy when he speaks ex cathedra.
What are we even talking about? He's still a heretic. We're not talking about the infallible. We don't care about the Roman Catholic position. He's still a heretic. Stanoi Mali, I'm going to kick you. Please try to come back in because it's not connected. It's saying that it's disconnected. Come back. Try to come back. Okay. Hold on. Esoterico, welcome. Hello. What was your question or comment, or did you want to address one of the folks on the screen?
I just wanted to address this sort of situation because I believe there is a precedent in the iconoclasm where I believe it was they basically offered some of the iconodules like, you know, you can do your thing and like we can do our thing, and you know, I think they gave this guy like a whole church like full of icons and everything, and then he you know, to come into communion with them, and then he like, you know, did the liturgy, then he like left to go back to his monastery, and then he like turned around, said, hold on, this was totally a mistake. He turned around and said, actually, I reject communion with you. And I don't know if they killed him or what they did with him. Same thing with the Henoticon, right? They said, okay, you know, you could teach two natures, you could teach whatever you want. Just don't criticize these people who are doing the one nature thing. And, you know, you could just shepherd your flock or whatever. And, you know, the Orthodox, the Orthodox party refused to accept it, right? And they considered it to be, you know, of soteriological weight. And it would be different if it was like, you know, like Bishop Augustinus. You know, he was putting out encyclicals saying we need to stop doing this, and then he was saying I'm going to stop commemorating, and then he eventually did, and that would potentially be a different situation. But that's I don't know of anyone who's really doing that right now. If Seraphim of Pyrrhus or whatever was like saying, you know, if you putting out some kind of red line and saying, I'm ready to walk out of this, and everyone needs to repent, and he non-commemorated or something, but he celebrated with the whatever, the Ukrainian schismatics or whatever they consider them. And so,
well, even worse, I mean, as much as people like to talk about Seraphim of Piraeus as a hero, everyone forgets how poorly and heroic he was during the COVID situation, because he threatened to excommunicate anyone who didn't get the jab. Wasner writes, even if this bishop is anti-ecumenism, in all reality he isn't, because he's yoking himself to the ecumenists who are heretics. And that's true. That's ultimately is the problem, is that there's no way that this is one of the problems, I think, Phil and Dan, when you're in World Orthodoxy, hold on. When you're in World Orthodoxy, you already deal with this two minds deal. So you assume it is the normal, and it's not the normal. It's actually quite abnormal. Let me see here.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, no, absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know enough about canons and what's the right interpretation of understanding them, and whether we're supposed to, what that really means to flee any sort of bishop that's under heresy.
It means literally to flee. Just go find another one that's Orthodox.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, in World Orthodoxy, I'm in World Orthodoxy, and we have a ton of saints that you guys probably, I don't know, would you recognize them as saints, like Saint Porphyrios or Saint
Once
Paisios?
you start doing that, okay, you cannot come in from a position of error to the Orthodox and then say, hey, but wait, I've got my baggage here and I haven't checked it. I think it's probably right, but you guys should probably accept it. In the first place, this automatically presumes accepting the authority of the heretical ecumenical patriarch that you're leaving, who glorified all those people in question. In the second, you haven't dealt with all the saints that our synods have made. You haven't accepted them. Instead, you might want to reorient yourself, stick with the fathers of the undivided church before the controversy started, and learn more about the saints around us.
My question is, if the potential in World Orthodoxy is to become a Saint Iakovos or to become a Saint Paisios, then what am I really missing in?
Well, I would argue that Elder Paisios was not a saint and misled people. And so I would say that, in fact, the biggest problem many people have had with coming to true Orthodoxy, and I personally believe that this is why Father Peter Heers and others push the most recent elders, is because the most recent elders on your side say things that are incredibly...
Hello? Oh.
Yes, hello?
Oh, sorry. You guys just...
Yeah. The point is that... they say things that are not in the consensus of the church. They say things that are not in the consensus of the fathers. That it's okay to commemorate a heretic. That you don't have to separate as the canons dictate. None of the holy elders before the 20th centuries would ever have said any of that. But that's why people, and I hate to call out Father Peter again, but he's never responded to us directly, precisely push them. Because they want to keep you from seeing the totality of the church's teaching. So you're not going to get the same teaching from, say, Elder Paisios as you would from, say, Blessed Paisios Velikovsky. You're just not going to, because one of them drinks from the life-giving spring of Orthodoxy, and the other one has fallen away from it.
I was going to say, his disciples, Elder Paisios, his disciples are non-commemorators, to my knowledge, right now. They're not perfect. I'd have a lot of criticisms of them, and some of their wacky ideas about passports sending you to hell, and things like this. But
one of them, Elder Gabriel Marathos, openly praises Vladimir Putin, who's a communist and anti-Christian. Yeah. He praises the whole war in Ukraine. I mean, this doesn't sound right. I mean, this would be like if we heard saints praising Stalin, which the Moscow is canonized saints that praise Stalin. But this just doesn't sound right. If these people were such holy people, then how would they not recognize that Vladimir Putin is a devil? That's my
So
point.
I mean, but you would have to say that about literally every single one of them,
Yes.
right?
I mean, it's like, okay, the cops have saints, right? The cops are people who, they say did miracles, and uh, if you look at like Saint Hieronymus, he was on the new calendar when things were nowhere near as bad. So maybe this isn't really a good example, but he had developed some clairvoyance and some level of grace. But then when he understood that he prayed about it, he understood, hold on, I'm not really supposed to be here. He left, and he experienced an increase of that grace.
It
Um,
was ridiculous
so
slander.
we don't really have to like explain every last thing. Like people say, oh, like weeping icons. Well, that could be God calling you to repentance. You know what I mean? Um,
Weeping
yeah,
icons they often portend disaster.
yeah.
It
So
just
this is
seems. Sorry, go ahead.
no, please.
I was just gonna say it just seems like if me remaining in World Orthodoxy, I have the potential to become, by God's grace, to the level of a Saint Yakovos or whoever, who I'm assuming in your eyes is a heretic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you remain in Roman Catholicism, you
It
can be
seems
like,
like a
yes.
tough sell to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, if your whole goal is to point to somebody you already presuppose as a saint and say, I can be just like
Mm-hmm.
him, unfortunately, if he is a schismatic or heretic, you will join his fate as well. So you have to use the yardstick of orthodoxy. Otherwise, you could delude yourself and lead yourself to a fallen state.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are they trying? Reader John asked a very good question here. As a member, remember, members get their questions on the screen. Why are they trying to use the state to take over the real Figmenu? They've been doing that for 50 years. They've blockaded the monks, taken away their electricity, and attempted to keep all the food shipments and anything that's been given to them out. They've been trying to literally kill them and have successfully killed them. And you point to some guy in the sky, this Paisios or Yakovos of Vivia, when you guys are literally killing our monks in Esfigmenu? Really? Like, how can you say that these people are so holy when they allowed such evil? How can you say that?
Yeah, I don't know the details about what's, if any of the saints had allowed that
Mm-hmm.
or encourage it. At least in World Orthodoxy. Do you guys venerate?
Well, the patriarch is the one pushing it. He's literally the one behind it, and has pushed the Greek state to get worse. Like, it's not like he's been like, oh, I don't want the monks to get hurt. He's literally the one saying, hurt the monks.
But I guess, like, I mean, on the surface of it, I don't support that. Like, so what does that have to do with me? I guess.
So your bishop support it.
Because, okay, the reason this is important is because in every single situation with heresy, involving heresy, I mean, there's a few signs, right? There's a few prognostic signs that we could use when we're trying to discern things. So, for example, if there's a council that like blatantly violates the canons, there's usually not truth in that council, like the Robber Council of Ephesus and like the Council of 1925 or whatever that instituted this whole innovative regime, right?
1923,
And 1923, yes. And one of these signs is who is resorting to violence and who resorts to violence first.
Well,
And
one
if
thing
you
I
look,
do...
yeah,
Go ahead.
it's always the heretics who need to, yeah.
Oh, I just want to read Brian the Swede's comment. He says, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a holy man. By this logic, I should remain Lutheran because it has holy men in recent years.
Yeah,
and that's you can't...
Or the Copts, like the Coptic Patriarch, he memorized the entire Bible in 3 languages while he was like in house arrest. I would want to be like that, like,
yeah,
who
the
would
real...
want to do that? Yeah.
What you have to ultimately do is not put your trust in princes and the sons of men in whom there is no salvation, and put your faith in the truth of orthodoxy, in what has been handed down. When you do that, things will go better and be clearer for you. 4 of the people here, go ahead. Hi, Reader John. Welcome. What's comments?
Oh, that was me.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start.
Sure.
All right. Well, let's go with the person who was going to say something beforehand.
How do you guys perceive Saint Nectarius then? Because Saint Nectarius was not considered a saint by Constantinople until actually very recently.
And he prophesied as well. Saint Nectarius prophesied and said that they would change the calendar and that the faithful should not go to those churches.
Correct.
No, that's a prophecy of Saint Nectarius. Yeah.
Well, for everybody here, why is heresy bad?
Because heresy literally means an error.
Heresy
No.
is literally about. Okay, who's asking that?
Ezekiel standing over here. Sorry, should have probably explained that.
Okay, well, yeah, no, heresy is bad because it is a way. It's a perversion of Christ's teaching.
Well, it cleaves you away from the body of Christ.
Yeah,
I mean, just look at the scriptures.
Literally.
Just look at the scriptures about this. I think it's St. Paul. It says, a heretical man, do not abide with. St. John, I think in his third epistle says, he who denies these doctrines of Christ, have no fellowship, don't even wish them, good day. Paul says, if you preach another gospel, even of an angel from heaven, if you preach another gospel, it's anathema. And really, you see, whenever there's a deviation, even if there's always some kind of after effect that something's going wrong. So, like, you look at the Copts, all of a sudden they don't teach theosis anymore. They start innovating with what they do with worship. They use instruments and all these things you're not supposed to use. Their iconographic style deteriorates. Right? You look at Roman Catholics. It starts with a few little things, but then all of a sudden you start to see all these other weird innovations that show that they're not connected to that life source, right? It all becomes like a dead religion, if that makes sense.
Precisely, yes. And the thing to remember is that many, many, many people perform miracles. One of them was Aleister Crowley. There is no salvation in a heretic. That's why they're heretics, because they are separated from God. That is the thing. That is why heresy is so dangerous, and consolidating and being in communion with heretics is so dangerous.
Yeah, it literally cleaves you from cleaves you away from the body of Christ.
Or Saint Gerasimos, he tamed lions. He did all kinds of things, and he accepted. He was either the Henoticon or maybe it was he rejected Chalcedon, and one of his disciples had to
didn't
come
he
and
repent,
basically.
though?
Yeah, he repented.
Yeah.
He repented, but that's the point. Is that just because he was holy didn't mean he couldn't be deceived, right?
Right,
Well,
but the whole point is that did these people repent?
You can be deceived up until death.
Yeah, and your personal virtue doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be deceived.
Yeah, right.
But Saint Gerasimos, when he was a heretic, was not capable of being a saint. After he repented and returned to Orthodoxy, then he was a saint. Then he could become a saint.
Right.
He was a virtuous man, but he was a heretic. If he repented, yes, he could be a saint. But no, he did not.
Because when you
he wasn't that virtuous either. I mean, the guy was beating himself in the streets for attention.
You repent, they have that fancy Greek word metanoia, which means you turn away.
I appreciate everyone's answer. I want to know, do you guys, what's your view on Elder Philotheos Zevakos?
Oh, I think he was a good man.
I think he's probably a saint because I think he's been misinterpreted by the new calendarists.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
he was an old calendarist. He died an old calendarist.
Saint Joseph Hezekiah. He's also been the new calendarists try to connect him.
Yeah, they said that was Saint Joseph Hezekiah.
Yeah,
I think it was Saint Vladimir Moss as well.
He kind of
Is it not true that he confessed people on the new calendar as well?
Yeah, but you gotta remember.
Economia, Eronimus did that too. Yeah,
you gotta remember that. You gotta remember the time period. It wasn't like a distinct break. So people were trying to keep the tradition of the old calendar and kind of give some economy to the new calendars until it was very obvious that the new calendars were going their own separate way and created,
When did that happen where it was very obvious?
1965.
Yeah, the 65 event is usually the big one.
So like Elder Joseph's synod went back. They went back on the old calendar, and they instructed the fathers at Holy Transfiguration Monastery to do the same. And that's why they left Go Arch, is
Well,
because they felt like they were told to do that by Elder Joseph's
Yeah,
synod.
now it's important to remember that after the 1965 declaration, most of Mount Athos actually cut off communion with the ecumenical patriarchate.
yeah, and Elder Ephraim for a long time was with Roquefort until he got threatened.
Yeah, exactly. And so it wasn't until the rise of the New Holy Mountain Fathers in the 1970s, which is something you can read about on sfigmenu.com to learn more about the confessing monastics of Mount Athos, that the patriarchate literally began pulling out and having non-commemorating abbots arrested, and then he put in his own guys, and that is ultimately how he got Mount Athos divided. And to that end, there are a lot of people on Mount Athos who are loosely connected to Sfigmenu, on Skeets, etc.
And the
But the whole
killers.
point, you can't just say right off the bat, that they weren't in favor of what was happening at the time. They were actually quite against it.
And it's a good example of people talk about Father Peter here's, it's like, the golden chain of the saints, goes back, the saint to this saint to this saint.
Yeah,
but
they broke
the new fathers were disconnected from that, because the zealots were those righteous men of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Those guys were zealots. And when they were persecuted and removed, the new fathers didn't have them as mentors to learn orthodoxy from.
The flaw of Father Peter is that he works his way backwards. You're supposed to work from the fathers forwards.
Exactly.
I don't mean to keep
please.
jumping from different topic to topic. I'm hearing
That's what we're here for.
I appreciate the responses. I always hear the critique against. Are you guys you guys are the GOC under, is it Metropolitan Demetrius?
I mean, I am. Not everyone is here.
So everybody's got different synods.
We've got different synods. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Metropolitan Demetrius. I've known him for years, but I'm not under his synod.
Would you guys classify yourselves as like quote unquote Florinites?
I'm just true Orthodox.
I guess the only reason I'm asking is because I always hear
Florinites is a Greek term, and so there's people under Russians, Bulgarian,
and that was a specific time period. I would say.
I guess I'm just asking the question because I always hear the critique against true Orthodox that the ordinations were potentially done in an uncanonical way.
That's what the Matthewites, and that was corrected in the
the Matthewites were actually corrected in the early 1970s, and for a short period they were actually in communion.
If Roquefort didn't exist,
and the Roquefort ordinations were approved a few years later by Metropolitan Philaret. So it's really just like when Saint Meletius, there was no Orthodox bishop in Constantinople, so they didn't just say, "Oh, well, I guess we can't put one there." Saint Meletius, who was again actually one of a couple Orthodox bishops in Antioch at the time.
Yeah, there were like 3 or 4 different.
Yeah, he sent Saint Gregory Nazianzus to Constantinople, outside of his territory, right? But they needed an Orthodox bishop, so he sent him to Constantinople, and he had a very small church, and the whole city was Arian under an Arian bishop and an Arian emperor, and it was in that small church that he gave the theological orations. And so this is exactly the situation with Roquefort sending bishops to the Greco calendars. It's almost the identical situation. So I don't know how you could challenge the canonicity of it, and even if you could, it's like,
well, you can challenge the canonicity of it, but you can't challenge the regularization of it later.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, obviously, I don't encourage violating the canons, and that is like a big issue, and I think some, but at the end of the day, like heresy is far worse, right?
Well, the canons can be applied with leniency or strictness, and that's up to holy and right-believing bishops to rightly divide the word of the truth.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is because in every age of heresy, we see Orthodox. We don't just see Orthodox saints; we see Orthodox hierarch saints, Okay, right? We see people who were saints who were also hierarchs who stood up. It's normally not the job of monks to do that. Like there was Maximus, Saint Theodorus, but really it's the grace of the hierarchy to do that, right?
You don't see a lot of readers of
Yeah,
subdeacons though,
yeah,
unfortunately.
and and but the point is that there's none. World Orthodoxy has none. They don't have a Mark of Ephesus. We have like 4. Like they don't have any of these bishops. And if you look at what hierarchy was clearly competent to take a look at the situation and decide, it was about what to do. It was clearly Rocor. Like half of the hierarchy is potentially saints,
Till
and
2007, anyway.
yeah, but
Yeah.
Anthony, legitimate clairvoyants, Anthony of Los Angeles, Archbishop of Urki, Saint Philaret, Saint John of Shanghai. These are like the cream of the crop.
Holy
They're
Higher Monk
not,
Seraphim of Platinum.
Father Seraphim, right? Like this was the elite of the elite. This was the best people in the Russian
Listen,
church. They're extremely holy. I mean, they were wonder workers, and I mean, there's so many stories you could see about them. And that was the call they made, was to invoke Canon 15 and receive people from the Greek Church and send bishops to the old calendarists. And you can't say they were influenced by any kind of state actor. They were totally free from that, any kind of Caesaropapism or whatever you want to call it. So it seems like I'm going to go with them. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to look at the witness of Rocor and all this stuff. And if you consider Seraphim Rose a saint, all these people, St. John of Shanghai, you're going to have to look at this. And then you're going to have to square it with
well,
Peter hears what he says. And you're not
well,
going to be able to make it square.
But weren't Saint John of Shanghai and Father Seraphim Rose and some of these guys, weren't many of them either confessing people on the new calendar or?
well, according to Constantinople, though, St. John of Shanghai is schismatic.
Yeah, they use it to justify ecumenism. They say he was a schismatic and he's a saint, so why can't like Saint Francis be a saint?
Yeah.
But and this is all like economy. Like this is all like a very blurry situation. But at the end of the day, it's like, what do you have to do personally? You know?
Well, and here's the thing: before the late 19th, early 20th century, when we started developing these more deep-set ideas of ecumenism, you were either Orthodox or you weren't. There wasn't official Orthodoxy. There wasn't genuine Orthodoxy. There wasn't true Orthodoxy. There was just Orthodoxy. So either you were Orthodox or you were outside the church.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have this official patriarchate thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is 20th century inventions, and a lot of them is supported by geopolitical actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the OCA is a perfect example. I mean, the OCA was saying, yeah, no one recognizes us, but basically we're obviously still Orthodox. We're obviously, and then obviously once they were recognized,
until they went into schism in the Cleveland Council.
Well, that was the thing, is that they're schismatic to begin with, which is a thing when they say canonical, they don't address these issues. But when they went back, when they were started being accepted and officially recognized, all of a sudden, oh, okay, we're canonical. We're going to make a list of all the canonical bishops, and these ones aren't. But in the 1960s, OCA was saying the same thing we're saying. I mean, obviously different, but
no, they're starting to suck up to some people over in Moscow so they could get a Thomas in 1970.
Well, yeah, but once they got that recognition, they were like, okay,
we're legit now.
We're legit. We're canonical. No one else can be.
We got a paper.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Oku in the World Orthodox mess over in Ukraine. They got a piece of paper from Constantinople, and they think they're legit now, even though they're a bunch of schismatics.
Yeah. And Father Peter Hears will tell you that no, that doesn't work. Just because they go into communion with the official church, they're still schismatics. They still violate all these canons. The same charges can be laid at the feet of Moscow Patriarchate, of the OCA, of the Greek State Church, where they had like 3 hierarchies at one point, and they just kind of...
Yeah, but Father Peter Hears has a blind spot. He forgets that the State Church of Greece persecuted those who held to the traditions. To be honest.
Would
Any
you
more questions, fellas?
Yeah, I guess there's just one more question. Would you open up the possibility that World Orthodoxy has grace in their sacraments?
No,
No.
absolutely not. Not since 1965, not since the 1983 anathema. It was honestly questionable in 1935. St. Chrysostom of Florida.
Let me ask you.
I'm
going to be nice to these guys. Did you even know that Patriarch Demetrius concelebrated and communed with a pope?
Are you there?
That's for you guys.
That's for you guys, the Greek Archdiocese guys.
You cut out. I didn't hear
But
your question.
yeah, who did they commune with?
Patriarch Demetrius communed with the Pope at that time.
I didn't know he communed with the Pope.
And of course you don't, because they don't tell you that part of the history. You actually have to look it up.
Yeah,
before making a judgment on whether or not we should recognize if you have grace, we would strongly, and I think everyone here would agree, we would strongly recommend reading more about the history of what happened in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's kind of a hope against hope. There's no reason.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the term, if you study history, you will cease to be Protestant? Well, if you continue to study history in the 20th century, especially around Ecumenism, you will cease to be World Orthodox.
So is there a go-to book that you recommend
reading?
Russia's Catacomb Saints.
Okay.
Which is available on the Afrosinos Cafe.
Well, if you're coming from a more of a Greek perspective, though, I would recommend the Subdeacon Nectarius's book.
The Roker and the GOC book?
Well, that one and the one he just translated.
Phil has met Subdeacon Nectarios before.
Who?
Phil has met Subdeacon Nectarios before.
So have I.
That's great.
Yeah. Well,
I've
you
talked
should
to him
get
on
his
the
new
phone a
book.
lot.
The recognize the Fighter Flea book. Like that's gonna put this all to rest. I think.
No, not that. The one that talks about the history of the Greek Orthodox soul calendars, or whatever the title is. I can't remember.
Can I find? Do you have a link to Patriarch Demetrius? You said.
Do I have a link?
With
I'm personally not in front of a computer, but I think.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not the problem. Is that that's not even the only thing. If we look at the history
it's like a culmination.
Bartholomew, they've literally been commemorating the Pope as first in the taxes for the better part of 35 years. Yeah, I mean, this is like, we're not trying to shock you. It's just that, and I don't want to be rude, it's just that the level of information that you have to assume that we're the same is a huge mistake, because there is a difference between confessing the faith and basically selling out the faith.
Yeah, there's a fancy Greek word you can ask your priest. It's called homologia. It means same confession. Homologia.
And the fact that, I mean, yes, there's good people, whatever, who teach basically what's correct, right, in these jurisdictions, but the fact that they're not breaking down the door trying to remove these people, that they're just kind of okay letting themselves be in quasi-communion with the Pope, shows that something is wrong, right? Because that's not what Orthodox people do. You know what I mean? That's not how Orthodox people act or think. And that already shows you that there's some kind of spiritual malaise in these places. And it's like, okay, can I go with a metal detector or whatever and say, I sense grace in the sacraments or whatever? It's like, that's not Holy Father's going to think that way.
Well,
remove yourself.
There's an unofficial intercommunion anyway. It's not official, but it still happens.
And
another important thing to consider is that you can believe the words that a person says in front of you, especially when they have earned your trust through, even years of spiritual guidance. The ultimate point is, and this is very important, our allegiance is not to any bishop, it's not to any priest. It is the word of God and the truth. Most importantly, there are many things that you can see on just the St. Euphrosynos Cafe, like documents. There's definitely things in the True Orthodox Hangout Discord. If you're on Discord, there's plenty of people there who can help you. But the important thing is that you don't have to believe any of us. What you need to believe is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, even the
research.
scriptures, just even the scriptures are so clear. Building your house on rock. That's the whole thing about trusting the word of God. Rock versus sand.
See,
I mean,
If I
what?
may, I'm
Yeah.
just going to, because we have some member chats from Orthodox Wild Stuff. Who is addressing someone in the chat, but these are so worth it to put up. I know people who drive 8+ hours. Maybe it means you place yourself under a priest and do typical with a blessing when you can't go to church. So for those who don't have a true Orthodox parish near you, just remember that does not mean everything is hopeless.
You're still part of the body.
Yeah, email a priest like Father Stephen Allen or another priest in your area, doesn't matter who, and ask genuine questions. That's so true. I mean, the simple reality is one of the things that when we really started making kind of a dent in people seeing what true Orthodox are about is that people really come in wanting to say, like, let's see what we can find wrong and have a little fun debate and agree at the end. This is about the truth of the Holy Orthodox Church, which was established by the Holy Apostles at Pentecost. This is not a game for us. So we ask you, at the very least, consider taking the reasons why people were willing to be martyred for their faith and the reason why people are willing to be persecuted, like in Figmenu, and, not go to the easy church where they do the, joint prayer service with the Anglicans, etc.
Yeah. And you don't have to go to vigil and you don't have to do any. Yeah. Yeah.
Or, like St. Catherine Rhodes, who was martyred by the new calendarists. They literally, the police beat her to death.
Yeah.
I have a question about that hypothetical driving 8 hours. So Phil's been to my parish. He knows that I have a good priest. My priest does some type of service at least 3 days a week. I'm 20 minutes from the parish. I'm serving 3 to 4 times a week in the altar. Would you tell me that it's better to go to that 8-hour parish once a month as opposed to going to 3 times a week to a priest that I know?
Yes.
Yeah, and it will be evident. It will be evident.
Well, here's my question, my friend. What do you think our answer is? First of all, from your perspective, what is our answer?
Probably no, considering that that's what I've heard from Twitter and from Orthodox traditions on YouTube. I don't understand the fact of saying that for some people it's better not to go to church than to be able to go to church.
It's not an issue of going to church.
It's
not a social issue.
Okay, I think I know what's going on here. So here's the confusion. So we will not consider you a church in the fullest sense, right? Because you lack grace, right? From our perspective. So the question you just posed is kind of nonsensical as us because you don't even recognize World Orthodoxy, right? So, so do you see how we got to the answer? Why
right, but now I want to clarify something from a practical standpoint because I feel like Dan is going to take this, and no offense, Dan, it seems that's kind of where we're going here. Is that you kind of feel like, oh no, what he's saying is that you better to sit at home and get away from those horrible priests and not have a spiritual life. Dan, if you want to go to church 3 times a week and you want to say the services 3 times a week, you can say
nobody's stopping you.
You can literally say all of the church's services without a priest every single day if you want. And you don't even have to leave your house, but you do have to actually read the services. So the question of what spiritual benefit you're going to get from being at the services is not up to what a World Orthodox parish tells you. It's up to what you can handle yourself.
And who
we
you're
encourage,
in. And if
we
you're
encourage
not.
people to read services as much as they can.
But the most important part is you cannot separate yourself from Christ, or else you can't do these things.
Exactly.
And I think there's the idea. Well, maybe I'm having some kind of spiritual benefit or whatever, and I had more. I mean, obviously now I have a parish, but over the summer I didn't, and I made more spiritual progress without confession, just doing reader services or just doing prayers in the prayer book than I did when I was going to daily confession, or not daily, weekly confession in OCA, and there's a story that I was told by one of the monks at about how bad this can get. About he's a monk with us, but he was previously either a novice or he was hanging around with like Ephraimites and stuff in Arizona. And there is obviously a grace that operates outside the church to draw people to the church, right? And he was under obedience there, and he was getting some kind of benefit. And he said he felt like he was, floating on air, all these things. And he said the more he began to learn, the more that sort of began to decline. And when he got to the point when he realized, okay, yeah, I really, okay, this isn't really making sense, but he just ignored it. He ignored his conscience, and he took communion on Pascha. He had a phone call with someone. They said, come on, you shouldn't do this. He's like, I'm not looking into this. I'm done with this. I'm just going to live my Orthodox life here, Arizona. And he took communion, and he fell under God's judgment in a really severe way. And he was like, he was spiritually dead. He was spiritually dead for.
Did he become physically sick as well?
Yeah, he was sick. He became spiritually dead. Couldn't pray. Couldn't do anything. And he said, I was so deluded, I didn't even understand why.
You got to read those Corinthians
what
a
was
little
wrong
more,
with me.
buddy.
He said, I didn't even know. I couldn't even put the pieces together because it was so obvious. But and then eventually he was like, okay, now I understand what was going on. And he said he came, he joined the church, and he was revivified. And so I think if you think, okay, well, I'm making progress here
because he repented.
Yeah.
That's the key. Repentance and struggling.
Yeah.
There's no convenience in Orthodoxy.
Well,
there's struggling.
and even coming to because repentance is kind of just acknowledging our inability, and even coming to the true church is kind of about repentance, because you have to say,
you can't repent
unless
unless you receive contrition.
Yeah. But you have to say, hold on, I can't actually make this judgment based on what I want to be true. And maybe that's kind of terrifying in a way, that what might be true. But repentance is saying, is repenting of my own will,
And when you seek out the truth, there'll be so many temptations laid in front of you. And you will want to take the easy path. I bet he can tell you that.
Yeah.
I do have a question as to why your synod is not in communion with Metropolitan Demetrios' synod. What is the impediment there between communion between the two?
Who are you asking?
Yourself, Father Joseph. What is the impediment between your synod of true Orthodox and the...
Well, as I mentioned, we are in communion with Metropolitan Angelos of Avlona. They have an existing Greek synod. Metropolitan Demetrius is under Metropolitan Archbishop Kalinikos of Athens, and so that sounds to me like an internal Greek problem that they can work out on their own.
Okay, yeah. I think this has been an interesting conversation. I think I'm going to head out.
No problem.
Phil and
God bless you, Dan. Good try. It was good talking to you. It was good trying to reach out to us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Have a nice evening. Bye.
You too.
All right. You're always welcome back.
Okay.
Bye now.
Thanks, guys. We're going to head out as well.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
God bless you.
So I kind of had a question.
Sure.
So
now you have a question.
So today, after liturgy, basically I was like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but there was like a OCF hangout right at my college, and I was there after my liturgy, and this guy who knows I'm all calendarist was like, blah blah blah. He kind of confronted me about it, and I was like, okay, do we really want to talk about this? Are you actually interested in this? He was like, yeah. I was like, okay. And I think he just thought he was gonna basically be
steamroll him.
Yeah. He thought he was gonna just steamroll me, and I was like, okay, so Ecumenism. Let's break this down. And he was
here we go.
They always have to start from a position of weakness that they think is a position of strength.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah. Well, it started out. I said, "What's canonical?" And he was saying that. And I said, "Okay, well, what's canonical?" And he said, the Ukrainians. And I said, okay, well, what about the Moscow Patriarchate? You know, what about the, let's talk about, anyway, it's fun. But anyway, so he said, okay, I got to actually address this. He
I hope you
said,
did this
hold
over a
up. I
beer.
thought this was going to be something like really dumb. I thought this was going to be something really dumb, but I realized there's actually issues here I got to address. He was like, he's like, you should like send me resources. And so I was just kind of wondering what the, you know, because everyone's at a different level and it's not sure, like, you know, want to push too hard or push too little or, you know, things like that. I was just wondering what advice you guys had.
I think you sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
But if he starts asking for more resources and things like that, I mean,
I like
one of the
Orthodox
things,
info.
yeah, Orthodox Info is a resource. I've been collecting history on my guardingtime.com blog, but the resources are increasing, and there's lots of YouTube channels you can recommend.
Oh goodness, yeah.
So definitely, I would say that there's a few things that can be done.
Except for that one guy from Colorado.
Yeah, he's an interesting, you know.
Yeah, just ignore those videos.
Yeah.
Well,
those aren't good videos. Yeah.
Oh, Father, I have a question, if you do not mind.
Sure.
Going back to the question of Roca v. Splinter synods, this Archbishop Filaret in Australia, I believe. I think he's in Australia. Do you know anything about him? I can't find any articles online explaining why he broke from. I think he was with Archbishop Vladimir. I can't find any articles online explaining why his synod even exists.
The best thing that I can recommend, if you have his full name, is to probably look in Yandex, in Russian Wikipedia and things like that, to get more of the history. You can go through the archive and it will get you up to maybe 2010 to maybe 2012 in terms of finding stuff on Rocor history and confusion and the rest. But he's fairly recent.
Didn't seem to exist till 2018.
I was going to say, I think after 2010, 2012.
I like Wow says Healy Vladimir because he support Novorossiya, and then Filaret go and take other synod and kick 2 bishops from there. Now he got kicked from same synod. It sounds like the I like Wow who has tried to get on. I should mention, this is something weird, unrelated. I don't know if this is related to I like Wow like, but I did receive a couple of text messages from Russia this weekend asking if I could answer some questions or wanting to have a conversation of some kind.
How'd they get it out?
I cannot actually respond to those text messages. So if you do watch this, I apologize. You might want to try email. It's just, otherwise it's probably not going to work because my phone thing is weird that way. So I guess he says now he got kicked from some synod. He says he's a friend of Sava. I like Wow like his, and so
I don't know that name. I don't. Maybe if that's someone's suicide name is.
He says
maybe
his name is Ignatius. Ignatius. That's what he said.
I don't know it or not yet. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
He said he referred to himself as a Serbian Chad.
Игнатий! Привет, брат! Как усе?
Oh, now he knows it.
Хорошо. Что это?
Добро смотри. Yes, I know Ignatia. I didn't realize it was that Ignatia.
Okay. We got this settled. All right. So yeah, I don't actually know. I don't actually know the situation with Filaret. I would suggest, again, Yandex, Russian Wikipedia, finding their websites and getting their side of the story. It's a little too niche for me. Eventually, I'll probably get to it.
Sorry. Yes, okay. Thank you, Ignatia. Thank you, Father. Very good. I know you just sent me a message, Ignatia, saying you're trying to get on the stream. I'm sorry I didn't read it.
I I think
Yeah,
he
sure.
may have been trying to get on the stream, but he couldn't get his mic working for some reason, so it wouldn't let him on.
Yeah, that's very sad.
You have to allow permissions, I think. If your phone's not doing it, you have to jump back on until it does it. Depending on what kind of phone you have, too.
Yes, things got very quiet after the World Orthodox people left. They're very nice people. They're very nice people.
Well, I'm trying to find some information on Joachim Suris. Let me just see here.
It's a good conversation, man.
I
was originally not going to come on because I got a gift from Wuhan, as it were. So.
Oh, you got the Kung Fu?
Yeah, I got I'm trying to be careful what I say because I don't want fathers being ready to get taken down.
Okay, Father, Ignatius sent me a telegram message. He said he's wanting to know more about that Timotheos Athanasios, or whatever his name was.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not much you're going to find. His primary consecrator, Joachim Suris, was formed by a group of independents. I'm actually looking up to see if I can find it, but it's just going to send you further down the rabbit hole in terms of just how bizarre this whole thing is. Let me just see here, because I'm trying to see if I can find it. This is kind of from the period of independent bishops that occurred in the mid 20th century and to all the way to the 80s and 90s. And yeah, a lot of these people aren't even Orthodox. I think in Joachim Suris' case, everyone was formally Orthodox, but they were kind of independents. But I am looking. Hold on. So you have to go through these ridiculous apostolic succession lists, which is such a Roman Catholic-y thing to do.
Oh, that's a big thing. Were they like Orphishites? One of the people that consecrated that Joachim?
Yeah, he was connected to one of the Orphishites. Let me see. He began. This is where they list. Okay. Old Calendar Synod. Joachim Suris began his episcopal career in the independent movement, having been consecrated by Joseph Klimovich of the Ophish lineage. So I'm assuming that he was consecrated by Ignatius Nichols. And then he can. Let me see here. So this is Robert Angus Jones.
That name keeps popping up a lot.
Joachim
Ignatius
Suris?
Nichols.
Well, Ignatius Nichols, unfortunately, he was the one, like when people think of Ophishites, I'm pretty sure Ophish never actually consecrated anyone else. But after he made Ignatius Nichols, most of the people we think of as Ophishites got their ordinations, quote unquote, from Ignatius Nichols.
Oh, really?
Simeos Ophius, he did consecrate another bishop.
Sophronius Bishara.
Yeah, who reposed, or he apostatized and basically died a Protestant low church.
Oh, wow.
Well, that sounds like Ignatius Nichols, but in any case,
Nichols did die like doing his weird Catholic law, but yeah, he was a con man. He consecrated like dozens, if not hundreds, of people as bishops.
Okay, we have Ivan Turable. Greetings. What is your question? Hello? Okay, he vanished.
Ivan or Ivan?
He disappeared. He
might have said it wrong.
He dropped off. I don't know. He just kind of exploded, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so again, if anyone wants to join, we are in minute 36 of the second hour. So most likely we will be, unless something happens, we will be basically probably closing up in 24 minutes or so. Again, support the channel. We do need your help. So support us by subscribing or donating at nftu.net. Donate on Give, Send, Go, or on Odyssey. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if what we are doing is helpful. So again, but it is the live call-in show, so feel free to call in using the link at the top. Or just ask questions in the chat here or on the Ufrosinos Cafe. I don't know if Esoterico is in. Apparently, it was asked, is Esoterico in here?
I'm
Don't
in.
know if
I'm in the
esoteric.
call. I'm not in the live chat.
Okay, you're not at the cafe then. Okay.
Okay, yeah. I'm
Oh,
not a cafe regular.
oh, shame. You
Maybe I
could
should
become a
be.
cafe regular.
Okay.
I think it's misleading. There's no coffee. There's no clutches. There's nothing.
I'll start selling coffee. If that's going to be a thing, I will actually start. I will start selling Euphrosinos coffee. Okay.
All right.
We'll white label it. We'll find a way.
Average iPhone, sell coffee.
Will you ship New York cheesesteak too?
No, it's not that kind of cafe. I didn't come up with the name, guys. The site is like 22 years old. Okay, I just help out on it now and run it kind of, but I didn't make it.
Calm down, Father. Calm down. I'm just messing with you.
I know. Father, can you post a link to StreamYard? There is a link to. Isn't it on the main thing? Yeah, it's in white. If you look at the top of the chat, it's that pinned post in white.
Yeah. Should be that scroll up.
Okay, hold on. It looks like we have Stanoye Mali. Are you I like wow like /
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, congratulations. Are you also the guy who wrote me from Russia on my cell phone?
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Tell us about yourself, Ignacy. Or what's your question?
No, it's not me. I'm new totally.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask about this man, Timotheus, where I can read more or find something else.
You're going to find very little about him. Unfortunately, he's barely active. He did find, I know he made some group in Hawaii. I haven't followed up knowing anything about that group for the better part of the past 20 years. As far as I'm concerned, I thought he died, but he's not like connected to the true Orthodox in any normal sense. He was kind of made a bishop by these 5 independent bishops in the U.S. And then
I know old history. I mean, I know from where he have a fake apostolic, but I have one friend from USA who coming from him, and almost 2.5 years I tried to help him to join any synod, but it's not possible to. He sent me documents and everything what he have from his ordination, but I don't find anyone who can help him except people who is coming from Timotheus, and most of them joined to Avlona Synod.
Well, if they've joined to the Avlona Synod, then they're no longer with Timotheus. But if they're in the Avlona Synod, they can help him, I would assume.
Well, I'm not sure, but I find like a lot of people in Avlona Synod from Timotheus, and
No,
also
not to my
Timotheus
knowledge.
have a lot of, I mean not a lot of, but few bishops in the Greece and few churches and small chapels. So I was wondering maybe if you can help me to.
Well, I mean, if this man wants to be received into, Metropolitan Cherubim Synod, he should just reach out to them. I mean, you can reach out. Our Archbishop Irenaeus in the U.S.
Is he wanting to remain ordained? Is that the problem?
Well, the thing is because it's all about Mitra. On the one side, you have a guy who is a bishop more than 30 years, but actually he's not a bishop.
Yeah.
And he want to join some synod as a bishop, but in the same time, any normal synod don't want to accept him as a bishop.
Well, I don't know how you define a normal synod, but very simply, if his confession of faith is orthodox, his orders can be corrected. There are ways to do that are not like as simple as. That's why we have hierothesia versus hierotonia. But, a person who just wants to be recognized as a bishop without any investigation is not going to get far in any synod.
No.
Because they don't know who he is.
Well, for example, he tried to go to Kalinikos, but they say he can come only as a simple monk, for example.
Unfortunately, that's the choice of the synod.
Well, thank God for that. I mean, you'd rather be part of the church, right?
Well, when you get Mitra, it's not easy to give away.
And that's understandable, because if you've been
Understandable.
playing in the role of a bishop and you have flocks under you, it seems offensive to say that.
Mhm.
That said,
And
not everybody who's got a mitre on is an Orthodox bishop.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to dissuade you or him. If
No,
he's your
for
friend.
me, I don't get offended really, because I know
No,
very
I
good
understand
history.
where you're coming from. I think if he's your friend, I would say in humility, he needs to take what's offered him and stop shopping around different synods. If he wants to be part of the church, then he has to, in humility, accept what they offer him.
Well, I think the biggest problem is because his faithful people will not following him if he's not a bishop, I guess.
Well, I mean, in that case, that's a logistical question that should be dealt with.
Yeah.
But if my point is this, obviously, I am not part of the GOC Kalinikos. We may our Avlona or Synod, we might review it and have an investigation and say, no, he's fine. But the simple reality is that you can't go with the assumption that he's going to be made a bishop. There is no guarantee of that whatsoever.
Yeah, if he's working off that assumption, he's going to fail.
Right. But of course, we're going to take into account his flock, etc., things like that.
Yeah, that's a pastoral issue then.
Yeah, that's above our pay grade here, because there ain't no bishops on this chat.
Yeah.
So
I know. I mean, I don't ask for advice or anything. I just wanted to see if it's possible to find anything more about Timotheus, because I know he have churches and some bishops in Greece, but I cannot find them.
Yeah, I honestly, that's probably the wrong route to go. It's going to lead you to disappointment.
I think he was independent, wasn't he? So
if he wants to be true Orthodox, he should appeal to true Orthodox synods, and no amount of paperwork is going to make that better when you have the history of Athanasios' consecrator or Timotheus' consecrator. It's just not going to happen. Because you'll be going down a rabbit hole between the Ophieshites, between the living churches, peregrinations, the group that was assisted by Theophan Noli, the Clenta Georgis. The amount of stuff in the independent world is staggeringly bad. And that's part of the reason why most true Orthodox, and we have received people like that. And some of them died, very holy clergy and very holy even bishops. But the point is, they had the humility to come forth and say, I'm okay with being corrected if that's what needs to be done of me. I'm okay with being taken in under the role you give me. If that's, there are ways to say that and present that are useful. But one thing I can guarantee you is getting more Vagante paperwork isn't the path to do it.
No, actually, it looks more suspicious.
Does that make sense, Sonia?
Well, yeah, for me, I mean, I really don't have problem, as I said, because I really know good history of true Orthodox Church. For me, it's not a problem. But I just want to help him, nothing else. I mean, I asked friend, and he said to me, like, I asked this father, he know little about that Timotheus, you can ask him. So I only tried that, nothing else. I mean, everything what you speak last 2 hours, I'm already speaking 15 years. So I know everything. So it's not like, I just wanted to ask that. Even I buy book, that independent bishops. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, if he wants to ask of another synod, he's always free to, and he may get a different answer, but he might not. It just really depends.
Depends where he wants to be.
Now, if you said that there were people in the Avlona Synod who were taken in and have been corrected, and they were part of these groups, then I would highly recommend getting him in touch with them.
Well, most of them are not in Avlona now, but that is another story. It's not like...
Well, what do you mean they're not in Avlona now?
Well, most of them leave, go to other synod, or make home synod, and stuff like that.
Okay, then they don't care. I tend to look at my synod and my communion as kind of the last chance saloon. Really, like, if you can't hack us, you probably can't hack true orthodoxy, and it becomes obvious really fast. We try to apply economia as much as humanly possible without destroying someone's faith. But there are people who just don't want to deal with being in the struggle for true orthodoxy. They have a whole different agenda. And there's honestly the only people that can help at that point are the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah, well, I guess it's his thing then. I cannot do much.
You can pray for him.
Yes,
Well, yeah.
100. You can, yeah, absolutely. Try to put him in touch with people who can help, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Ignati, I might message you later. I might know someone who could help.
No, it's okay, brother. Don't worry. I just wanted to ask because, like, I don't know. I mean, I find even the documents that, like, that Timotheus really have, like, old calendar synod in Greek, and they have churches all around, like Athens, Thessaloniki, and North Greece. But it's not possible to find any, like, a live bishop. That's the only thing, nothing else. Anyway, I post in chat a photo of Patriarch Demetrius and Pope for the guy who asked. Just to know.
Thank you.
How are your teeth, Ignatia? I know you said you were having issues with your teeth.
What? Sorry?
I know you were having issues with your teeth. How are your teeth doing?
Well, I I don't know. It's little better now.
Auntie does ask everyone to pray for Gregory DeCoppoli. His wife passed away and he's not doing well. And we can do that.
Okay, guys. Father, have a great night. Thank you.
No problem. God bless you.
Time and Brother Sava. God bless. See you later.
Okay, dobro večer. Spokojna noč.
I know. Okay, so that was interesting. You know, I mean, there's not much you can do. I mean, we are a live Q&A show. Unfortunately, we are not canon lawyers. We do not operate as any sort of synodal dicastery. We're just a show on YouTube. Bishop Enoch is here. Benedicite.
God bless.
How are you doing today, Woody?
Is there a reason there's like a banner underneath? I can't see the names of who's on the call.
Hold on. Let me take off the banner. The banner was just an invite, but
okay.
Right now it's Reader John, and we have Sava.
Okay.
There was a guy who was just here. I guess he was a Serbian guy asking about one of the independent groups, ones under Timotheos Athanasiou, and we had explained that that's kind of he got the headgear, and he was like thinking he's going to come in as a bishop, and that's just not how it works. But as I was explaining,
I think Mitron Angelos like reordained a few of their priests.
Yeah.
They joined him.
Yeah.
And then then some of them didn't want to stay because they wanted to be made bishops, and they wanted to go back to being bishops. I think is what it was, or something like that. Because it's like a lot of times, like you'll take people in who were like bishops of some group you don't recognize, and they just be reordained as a priest.
Yeah.
And they get and they're like, I guess they hope that eventually they're going to get made a bishop, and they're not, you know, and you know they get upset and leave and whatever. So though even when they were a bishop in some other organization or group or whatever, they didn't really do anything. It wasn't like they did anything. Really did anything. So
yeah,
I mean, most people aren't. Most of us are. If you were made a bishop, it's like you know, in this day and age, it's like you got no one else to be made a bishop. I hate to say it like that, you know, oftentimes, you know, so, and you don't need a whole super lot, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but there's not really much you can do in situations like that. But,
what did you discuss tonight?
Oh, we had an interesting chat. We had two people from the Greek Archdiocese hammer us with a bunch of questions, which was awesome. That'll be an interesting clip.
What did they ask exactly?
You know, the basic questions. Why don't you? Do you believe we have grace? You know, why do you guys exist? What's wrong with Bulgaria and Georgia? Really basic questions.
Historical questions.
Yeah, mostly historical questions. And, we advise them, gotta read more, gotta get.
It's always a one-sided thing. Like, they say, "Why don't you think we have grace?" And then
you're
like, "Well, do you think we have grace?" Well, no, of course not.
Yeah,
then why would we? It's very odd. So.
Any Atomic Lead asks if there's echoing for anyone else. Something is echoing. I'm not sure if someone's eating or something, but.
I think Saul is polishing his guns or something over there.
Oh.
I did have a question, Vladika. Did you get the response that I sent to your email?
No, I did. I have not checked my email since Saturday or Friday. I can't. I saw the email you sent me about having these like church supplies that you had in storage that no one wanted, and I replied saying like you're gonna have to send me photos of what exactly you have.
Yes, I sent a photo. So
okay, I'll have to go look tomorrow or something like that and get back.
No rush, Vladika. No rush.
Okay, Sunrise asks, Father, do you have any recommendations for people to reach out for learning more about the GOCK? Really thinking about visiting one later this year. My recommendation would be find a priest of the GOCK and follow his instructions. Anyway, let me see here what else we've got going on.
Well, Father Boniface is here.
Huh?
I think Father Boniface is here, is he not?
Yeah, Father Boniface is here. Benedici Day. Well, there you are. How's it going?
Hello, Father.
Good,
how are you?
good.
It's Ezekiel.
Hey, Ezekiel, how are you? God bless.
Well. Thank you.
Yeah, Ezekiel's been a disembodied voice this entire stream.
He's shy around cameras.
I thought that was my conscience. Oh.
He's reached a high level of spirituality.
No, he's shy around camera, so he's sitting right out frame here.
That's fine. Father Boniface, we spoke earlier. You had some interesting news to talk about, or was it more personal?
Well, no. Well, the state of Florida has put on the ballot for the next election an amendment, and it's Amendment 4, and it's asking the people to vote to allow abortion from day 1 till the 9th month, and then it doesn't have to be and so they made it so ambiguous that it's opening up the door for every horrible thing that could be imagined. And the thing is that I heard about it when I attended a webinar by a faith and community action group that was with another group which changed its name. So I got informed about it, and I pulled down the bill and I read it. It's not 80 pages.
Wow.
And one of the chief justices is a member and an elder of the Presbyterian Church that kicked me out here in Lakeland, and the vote was 4-3 in favor of allowing the amendment to be put on the ballot, because it got contested by conservative groups like Liberty Council with Matt Staver, who was the Jerry Falwell's School of Law. He's been around. Matt's been around a long time. He's done a lot of constitutional and then Supreme Court. He's been in the Supreme Court a few times. And then you had the Catholic group, the Susan B. Anthony group. They had lawyers representing, and they presented an amicus brief in protest to not allow this thing to come to the ballot, because of their objections being that it was too vague and ambiguous. And so the justices, the vote was 4-3 in favor that it could be put up. And the one justice is an elder in a PCA Presbyterian church here in Lakeland. And so the basic idea was that they said that it was okay to bring it forward, and that they didn't want to judge on the matter. They decided to throw it to the people. And so I've summarized the whole thing to say that that acting in the spirit of Pontius Pilate, the 4 justices of the Florida Supreme Court have having the unborn at their bar, standing at their bar, have washed their hands and given the judgment into the hands of the people. And so obviously, I think the way I've mentioned it, yeah, like Pontius Pilate. So in other words, they've handed over the unborn to the judgment of the population of Florida. And so in their decision, they said that the population of Florida is intelligent enough to make a rational decision as to whether to allow abortion or not. And pardon me?
I said it was a gross overestimation of the population of Florida.
Boy, to say the least. And so it's very interesting because I picked up Vladimir Moss's article on the America at the time of the Revolution, and he quotes de Tocqueville in his book, where de Tocqueville says that, well, one thing about democracy in America, America's situation is that the majority rules, which means that the minority is strictly forbidden from having a real much of a say, which means that basically the history of the America now will be the continued dumbing down of the American population due to the bullying, that's my word, of the majority. And so then he also said, the tyranny of the majority is the worst tyranny of all. And so, so if this gets passed, we have a serious situation in Florida where, you know, people have been moving down here, but boy, it's going to be a corrupt pool of filth.
Didn't they have some sort of heartbeat law passed in Florida? What was that? What was by a DeSantis?
Okay.
What's the
last year?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get you a card because I'm going to tell you something, man. This stuff. This story gets more ridiculous. Okay, there was the what was called the Florida Heartbeat Act passed in 2023, and there's this card that a couple people that I know who have been actively pro-life for many years, and their mom started up the local clinic, pro-life clinic here in Lakeland. The Heartbeat Act does this. It allows abortions to save the woman's life or is at risk of damage to a major bodily function. 2, it allows abortions for victims of rape, incest, and human trafficking up to 15 weeks. 3, it allows abortion for fatal fetal abnormalities up to 24 weeks. Next, it requires in-person abortions be performed by a medical doctor or osteopathic physician.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're saying that this Heartbeat Act protects women, babies, and parents, and that's a joke.
I'm pretty gave them all the caveats to get out of it.
Oh my! And
yeah, Atomic Lead says like Pilate and Herod at once.
Yeah.
So it has enough exceptions to drive loopholes to drive a truck through. In other words.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That's right. And so I told my friends, I said, you're handing out this card, which on the flip side talks about the horrors of this amendment, and I'll read you to them. It supports full-term 9 months abortions. Okay, it removes requirement that only medical doctors perform abortions. In other words, they use the word healthcare provider instead of a doctor, which opens up the door for anybody. 3, it removes the doctor's obligation to inform authorities of suspected sex traffickers. 4, it eliminates parental and informed consent. So, you know, there you go. And then it requires
Florida, the most liberal state with abortion yet.
It will if it passes. Wow. And so therefore, and it requires taxpayers to fund abortion. And so this is coming up in November. And like I said, the one Supreme Court Justice, Charles Kennedy, is an elder at Covenant Presbyterian Church in Lakeland, Florida.
That's not abortion though. That's infanticide.
Yeah.
Well, it's all infanticide ultimately.
Yeah.
No matter what. So the Presbyterian judge decided that he didn't want to he didn't want to rule on this to make it illegal. He just said pass it off to everyone else, right?
Wow.
Pass it off to the general public. And I want to say this, that I wrote one of the... Go ahead.
So did the court ordered what do you call it? Returning it to the people.
Referendum.
Or, referendum. Oh yeah. The court ordered a referendum?
No, they did not restrict
No,
it.
what happened?
Yeah.
What happens is that to get an amendment proposed, you have to get signatures, and so a group of people get a bunch of signatures together and then present it to the court to get permission to put it on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the meantime, they've got they've got the pro group and the con group. And so, these people are for abortion. They have their arguments, and then they had groups coming out against it, and they stated their arguments. And so then the court ruled that the case was enough to be on the ballot. They said that.
Did they have grounds for not letting it on the ballot, or like how would that? Is it not just you get enough signatures and just?
It's a panel of judges, isn't it? And then the majority of the judges, whoever wins, that action proceeds.
Well, the grounds for not letting it be on the ballot would be that it would be improperly worded to the point where it would present error, mislead the public, and make a wrong decision on the face of the language of the ballot itself.
True, but would that still be up to that panel of judges to make that decision? Even if
it would be up to that panel of judges to make the final decision whether the language is acceptable, whether the principles are acceptable or not.
Even if they weren't.
Well, the thing is that you can say that the English is fine enough to accept it, okay, to be acceptable. And they said that the language had to be in the form of a one argument form in its English, that it was presenting one issue, and that alone to be presented to the people of Florida so that they can understand what's being proposed. But then the pro-life people are saying the language was so ambiguous that it's not, it was so ambiguous that it's not promoting one idea. It's actually allowing so many corruptions through the gate that it's not funny. And so a legalist could say the language says that it's a one issue deal. So therefore it gets accepted. But then on the other hand, they said that, well, it's a difficult issue. As a matter of fact, let's just throw it to the people. So that's in effect what they're doing. They're saying that the people are smart enough to handle this kind of an issue. And if you read the 80-page document, you realize that in one part, I mean, if I could find it real quickly, but they're saying that, even lawyers have even lawyers have to sift through to see the nuances and the potential deceit that bills, can have. And so, if lawyers have a difficult time doing it, imagine the general public. But the judges are saying,
it's definitely designed so that what can happen is they'll then bring, people will, think it means something more limited, and then they'll bring suit after it passes to enforce, a more egregious version of it.
As they say in politics, what starts in California ends up everywhere else.
Yeah, right. And the thing is that it'll produce it'll produce litigation out the wazoo. In other words, it's going to create all kinds of lawsuits, while, however, people are aborting. There's going to be a ton of lawsuits coming forward. And the thing is that, and I want to make this point too, is that, you see, this is a production, and it shows the devolution of democracy. It's just another path of the eventual deterioration of democracy as it moves into tyranny and anarchy. And so that's what you have. And so if you were to say to a Presbyterian church that your person is an error, they've got a problem, because they believe, as Presbyterians, that authority resides with the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to correct the matter on this judge as he with his argument as it stands would be problematic, because they could say, well, in form he's okay, but in principle he's not okay. So we're confused, and so it just creates a major, it's kind of a funny problem, because it's a nexus that the Protestants have gotten themselves into.
And now, Father
And
Moss,
yeah.
Father, I have a question. So the law or the amendment that it's an amendment to the Florida Constitution, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's going on a referendum, but the amendment is 80 pages itself.
No.
Okay.
No, the argument in the court case and the decision involved 80 pages. The amendment is, I think it can't be more than 75 words.
Okay. Well,
so it's readable.
There was a similar referendum in last year, I think, in like Nebraska or some Midwestern state, and about whether to make abortion illegal or not, right after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And like the population voted, to keep abortion legal in the state. But there were some complaints that if you look at the amendment, it was worded very strangely. All right. So there was actually, I was reading it and I was like, I'm not even sure what they're even voting on. But then again, I heard people also say that, a lot of these like Midwestern states, sometimes you just have to control the cities. And if you can have liberal cities, and then it doesn't matter what 95% of the state thinks anyway.
Pretty much.
Well, I think that's true in any state.
Yeah.
The one party will grab a hold of the cities where all the concentrated votes are, and that rules the rest of the countryside. So that works in Florida too, or even anywhere. But especially in those states, because you can have a conservative farm population, agrarian population, but if you get these liberals into the big cities, which is what they do, which is orchestrated. When I went out to Lancaster County to live in Lancaster County, when I went into the city, I was shocked to see the large Black and Hispanic population, which I thought was, this is an agrarian area, but no, it's a typical city. And so you see, this is all planned, and it's the population transference idea that the wicked have always had. You see it in the book of Amos, and also too, where they move peoples around. So anyway,
that was the Assyrian and Babylonian empires. Their idea is like once they conquer an area, you have to move in new population groups and move out population groups.
So that's why I have diaspora.
Because the idea is that you can't trust the native peoples. Mm-hmm. So you just bring in new peoples. You create colonies and things, and then
it's a cultural.
And those people eventually themselves it's not like they're going to ultimately rule. They're just being used as tools themselves for another ruling class.
That's why we have.
It's a cultural reorganization, because when you can reconstitute the culture, and change out their philosophy and their theology and the people's mores, then you can swing every people in the direction you want them to be. So that's why they do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like they brought in. Remember, in the during the time of Yugoslavia under Tito, Tito deliberately diluted the Serbian population throughout Yugoslavia. He moved Albanians into areas, and what have you. They promoted abortion, everything else to just depress the population. And Kosovo went from something like 90% Serbian to within like 25 years, like 50%, 60% Albanian. What have you, and they did the same thing for areas of Bosnia and other areas for the whole purpose of diluting the majority population group and such like that. I mean, you can do it with anyone, and forcing like I knew people who went to Yugoslavia in the late 70s and 80s on church missions and things, and this idea like the Communist Party of Yugoslavia was this conservative force, which I've heard people say that years later was absurd. They promoted full legalized pornography on television, like just on regular television. In the newsstands, they made pornography available outside. Tried to like put newsstands near churches so people. I mean, it was the whole purpose was to like create as much sexual immorality in the country as possible.
Demoralize the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they would move populations around because their main real target was the Orthodox society and such. You can say they targeted Roman Catholicism, which they did, but Croatia came out a lot better in the end than Serbia did. I mean, they did because Serbs were always really the target they had under Yugoslavia. It's sort of like the Soviet Union. Theoretically, like the Russians were supposed to be the dominant group, but ultimately the Soviets never. I mean, look, you had Lenin, who was, I guess, the closest you could get to being Russian, but he was 1/4 Jewish. Then you had Stalin, who was Georgian. Then you had Khrushchev, who was Ukrainian. And then, like, the successive leaders were either themselves Ukrainians or partially, like, Baltic peoples that just learned Russian and such.
Yeah. And when the ethnic groups decided they wanted out, that was kind of the end of the Soviet Union, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because remember, a lot of it depended upon that was Stalin's plan. That was Lenin and Stalin's idea. Like, it wasn't like Lenin believed in Ukrainian or Belarusian nationalism.
No, they believed in the Soviet man.
Yeah, his idea was he wanted to support like small nationalisms of like these outer states because it would weaken the Russians. That was the main idea behind it. Like that was like, for example, like the Soviets constructed modern Ukraine. Like they gave that's. I mean, whether you agree with what's happening now, that's the result of 70 years of Soviet monkeying around with the Russian Empire.
Yeah, and it seems like it's all an attack on pan-Orthodox identity. Really?
Yeah. Well, in the case of, I think in the case of the Soviet Union, yes, because they had to make as much like even Ukrainian. Like Ukrainiophiles who in like 19th century were never as anti-Russian as they are now. All right.
Yeah.
Like they had to exacerbate all of that because I think the original Ukrainian idea in the 19th century was that, well, it'll be like what we call Central and Western Ukraine, and then there'll be this like confederation with like the other Slavic peoples, so they'll be independent of sorts. That was basically all they really wanted, but that was not conducive to the Soviet mentality. And then later, when the Germans came in, they sort of supported Bandera, but then Bandera like turned against them and such. He was crazy because he killed a lot of people too and such.
Well,
but no,
when we had
I was going to ask Father Boniface.
When we had spoken about in the past about the Mackinder principles, which Brzezinski under Jimmy Carter promoted. And so,
question for you, Father Boniface.
Yeah, and this might be a little bit off topic, but you said you lived in Lakeland.
Yeah.
Were you in Lakeland during the time of that like big charismatic revival in Lakeland?
No.
Okay.
You mean with Rodney Howard Brown and all that?
With where they like legit thought they were about to start like a worldwide revolution, and like they had like hundreds of thousands of people living in like a commune, and like there was tons of just like false miracles and like all kinds of just craziness.
No, yeah, I wasn't there at that time.
Me as a kid, Okay.
Yeah, there are vestiges of that still hang around. With some tent revivals that I saw maybe a year or two ago. But and then Rodney Howard Brown though with the Laughing Revival is over here in Plant City, and I think in Brandon and stuff like that. He's he's a real mixed bag. He has this Americanism and this conservatism along with his Pentecostalism. So and
didn't the Laughing Revival start in Toronto or something?
But Rodney Howard Brown moved down to Florida. He's the one that started it, and he moved down to Florida.
I remember.
That's the thing Father Seraphim was talking about with like the people barking like dogs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was looking at it because I was kind of curious about it again, and it was crazy to me how much like it's like a parody of like Orthodoxy. because like even though these people have never heard of it, they're like citing all these verses that we would cite, but they're citing it to like defend their own self-created apostles,
Well,
you know,
even the
and
Oh
like
yeah.
doing like all this insane stuff, and they're talking about like, yeah, we need to do more, like we need to like see the glory of God, which is like an orthodox idea, but then like for
even the
them,
demons know the scriptures though.
yeah, and they're
Well,
citing like Psalm 50, and they're citing like Psalm 2, but they're saying like we're just like activating Psalm 2 right now, so the whole country's going to convert because like we're getting prophetic words that like God has activated, because you know in Psalm 2 it says,
Yeah,
you know, like why do the
I
heathen
remember.
rage, and
I
you know I'll give
remember
you the
what.
nations. They're like, we just activated Psalm 2. It was like insane, you know. But it's just like
remember
a
watching
parody.
it
It's like,
Now, remember during the First Great Awakening, if you read like some of Whitfield and Wesley's writings, they talk about people barking like dogs.
Yeah, not
back in the
getting on all
1700s.
fours. Yeah.
Yeah, there was all kinds of weird stuff that was going, like which gave some of them pause for what they actually what was actually happening. Because in any period prior to the First Great Awakening, that would have been considered like demonic activity.
Yeah.
That people just started barking like dogs and rolling around in the grass or whatever. You know?
Seething at the mouth.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll tell you one thing is that yesterday I went over to the abortion clinic because I heard that there's some people were supporting Amendment 4. So I've been over there before. I haven't done for a while. But so I met some people over there. And basically, though, the one church that was showing had a greater showing was the local Word of Faith church. And so I got talking to one lady, and so she started opposing me, and I started putting questions and then promoting the Orthodox faith. And she says, we are a kingdom of priests and kings. And so, you know, they're promoting all that I am a priest and I am a king. And this is a woman speaking. And I said, well, you know, women shall not bear authority in the church. And she got really angry. And she says, I don't believe in those parts of the Bible. I just believe in the 4 Gospels. I'm thinking, and you know, so I'm getting, you know, all this opposition. And it was funny because I met another fellow when I was walking around in my cassock in the city, and I was over at Lowe's, you know, the lumber yard there. And this black guy talked to me, and he says, you know, well, we're kings and priests. So here we go again.
Well, you know what's so weird about that is the verse they're quoting is from the Epistle of Saint Peter, but Saint Peter is quoting Exodus itself, and the verse in Exodus did not imply there was not a ministerial, the Levitical priesthood did not exist. It's like they don't even do they not realize that God originally said this after He gave the rules for the priesthood in the Old Testament, and then the Lord is just saying it again to the New Testament church, the people. The new people of God, that this does not imply that there is no, you know, sacerdotal ministry. It's sort of like the worst occasion of cherry picking Bible verses and such.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting like heresiological principle almost that like whenever you get this weird stuff, it always like starts to look like orthodoxy, but just like garbled, like Mormonism, right? It's like man becomes God, and there's like one church, and you know, only they have the power of baptism, but it's like just goofy, you know, church,
Well, it's
you know,
sort of
and
the devil is sort of recycling old heresies. I mean, remember if you look at the older heresies, which was like, you know, the first big heresies were like the Judaizers and then the Gnostics. Okay, that a lot of things are sort of like a lot of heresies that came after that are in essence just recycled versions of that.
Yeah.
And that's why you look about during the Arian heresy or in Nestorianism, Macedonianism, etc. That a lot of the fathers just said this is like recycled Judaizing, or this is recycled Gnosticism, or you know some sort of combination of paganism. And it almost seems like the devil had to keep on doing combinations of stuff until he got to something that looks like it's Protestantism, right? And you know that of course all explodes. It barely, you know, can't.
There's that esoteric principle too, because they say they get all this revelation, and they say I got taken up to these, you know, these heavenly realms, and I got shown all this stuff, you know.
You just wanted to use that word because it's in your name.
Oh yeah, but it's like the Gnostic, almost like the hidden wisdom, you know. And
well, I mean, At the end of the
A lot
day,
of it is just like Gnosticism. Gnosticism, just like this stuff, is predicated upon the idea of ahistoricism. That there is no like, for example, trying to argue with like a Gnostic or like a perennialist, like a Mason, someone who holds perennialist is someone who holds Masonic ideas, even if they're not a Mason. You're not going to argue historically with them, because they're going to say whatever happened in history doesn't matter. It's just this is the one and the truth of the one manifesting in the conscience or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
And the same thing for these people claiming to be modern day apostles. They just obviated 2,000 years of history.
Yeah.
Trying to argue about the church fathers and Saint Ignatius having been ordained by Saints Peter and Paul, and Saint Clement having been ordained by them. They don't care. Maybe some of them might convert, but most of them, it seems like there's a veil upon their face, their heart, just as much upon the Pharisees.
Yeah, and they can't see the light that shines through the Bible, right? It's just that's what St. Paul says. It's like the dead words.
Well, they become gods.
Trust ye not in princes and sons of men, and who
I told the lady, I said, no prophecy is of any private interpretation. I said, so you're on your own, and 2 Peter 1:20, and so when you're a god, I mean, hey. And this is the end result of private judgment. It's like Martin Luther opened up the can, and now everybody's walking around as a theologian and as a Bible expert, and so they're all gods, and they interpret things their way.
Father, I don't believe that part of the Bible.
Well, that's exactly what she was saying.
You remember?
I think that's a section I didn't write.
That doesn't fit my narrative.
No, I'm assuming the Word of Faith movement. That's just the same as like Kenneth Copeland.
You speak it into
existence.
And who was the guy that taught Kenneth Copeland? I can't remember his name.
Charles Capps.
There was some other guy. Remember, they came up with the doctrine that the atonement was really the Lord suffering in hell.
You got Kenneth Hagin.
Kenneth
Copeland.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking about.
Well, they were kind of contemporaries, but they said that Charles Capps, I think, was behind both of those guys. He's a little earlier.
Yeah, so even that's a distortion of the doctrine of the harrowing of hell. All right? So, our Lord dies on the cross. His soul, his divinity and his soul, his one person still, they descend to hell. They're not tormented by it. They're conquering it. God is God in the flesh. The Christ is conquering it, and then He sets the saints free, and then the resurrection and such, and they go to heaven. All right, but then again they come. But then there's this weird heresy that sort of takes that and says, "Oh no, it's the Lord going to hell, and He's like suffering in the flames of hell, and that's really what the atonement is."
I thought Word of Faith is where people like speak what they want into
they also base that upon Hebrews, the Epistle to Hebrews, that the substance of substance of faith is things hoped for, that you can sort of speak things like that's how there are actually some compilations on YouTube where they go through like a lot of these figures, and they're in context, like documentaries, you know what I mean? In which they say things like the God has His power because He has faith and He speaks things into existence through faith. All right, which almost goes back to, it's like a Mormon. There's some sort of a Mormonistic understanding there, even if they don't see it, where God is bound by some sort of other law. And it's almost like the demiurge in Platonism.
Well, and another distortion is that when people talk about the council of like the divine council, and that like humans are brought into the divine council, so that's like
the Psalm saying that I said you're gods, but you should die like men.
Yeah, well, also just
but they set themselves equal to God.
So they think that what they think is that to kind of make God move, like the prophets need to like the apostles need to like make these declarations.
Well, that's
a very Talmudic understanding.
Well, they look at like Abraham, how Abraham was going back and forth with God, right?
But specifically, it's like they're God's authority on earth, but not in a like we serve God way. It's like, okay, we want the stock market to go up. Okay, we need to make a declaration, and we need to sort of like they would say like loose it, like use the power of the keys.
So they think God serves their way.
Correct.
Yeah. It's magic. It's magical, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like magical thinking. Yeah.
Well,
Well, it ties into that prosperity gospel stuff, though.
yeah.
It all works in it together. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna
Covetous.
go through. Yeah. So I'm gonna go through the last few comments we've gotten. Jonathan Britt said Brownsville revival in Pensacola was a huge pre-last fest too. Happened in the 90s. Sunrise said there's a charismatic movement in Roman Catholicism that seems to be growing. Yes, that's true. Atomic Lee says, go for it, Father Boniface preach. Protestantism is highly Judaized and it's focused on academic quibbling over interpretation and language while lacking a propitiatory sacrifice. So yeah, I think those are all good comments. We are now we're now hitting the half-hour mark of the third hour. So basically, I just wanted to. I think we're going to wrap up in a few. Basically, I wanted to just go through the usual things that I say. In that case, first off, I'd like to thank everyone, to our guests, and to first off everyone who's on right now: Sava, Reader John, Vladika, Enoch. We're always graced by your presence. I do have one last point to ask of you. And Father Boniface and Esoterico, welcome to the stream. And thank you to our guests. We had Dan and Phil, who had a bunch of questions about true orthodoxy, so we were glad to answer those. And to the Ignati, he had some other name on the screen, I don't remember. Thank you for that. And to those who asked questions and had comments, and to those who support our mission, support the channel. We at NFTU need your help. Support us by subscribing or donating at nftu.net, on GiveSendGo, or on Odyssey. We remember all of you in our prayers, and thank you for the support for NFTU. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes, there is going to be, Sunrise asked if there's going to be a stream on Tuesday, and it's going to be the Mr. Beast stream. Yeah, we're going to ask the actual question because people are taking it seriously. Could Mr. Beast be the Antichrist? Maybe. I'm not going to reveal spoilers on that one, but there have been some interesting questions about that I think are worth covering. As well, Vladika, there was somebody who asked, I don't know if you saw this link, a channel called Roots of Orthodoxy did this video called, and I'm going to put it on the screen because, why not? Just the honest truth about the Western Rite. And so basically it is, of course, a pro-World Orthodox Western Rite kind of thing, and they wanted to know if we would be willing to review it. I don't know if you'd want to do that on the True Western Orthodoxy channel, Vladika, but I'd be all for it if you did. And
I guess we'll do. I mean, we've done something like that before.
Yeah, well, this one's new. This one came. This is another because this one came out when? Let me see here.
It's a big channel too.
Yeah, 2 days ago. So this is. I mean, obviously, personally, I think what's happening is we're having an effect, and questions about their legitimacy are starting to come up, and I think we need to press harder. So definitely.
Well, I mean, Corpus Christi and the Immaculate Heart are like a terrible hill to die on.
But but they're willing. They are willing. If they're willing to do it, let's call them out on it.
So I mean, Mary Alacoque, and that is just something that's their own problem they've created.
What about Stations of the Cross?
Oh yeah, they all have those,
yeah,
which are also wrong. Yeah. Not to mention, the post-schism venerations like Francis of Assisi, etc.
I see Eucharistic adoration too.
One thing that I called someone out on that yesterday on Twitter, and then he tried to say, "Oh, well, I guess all innovations are bad. Sorry, we use liturgical colors." And I was like, "Wow, these people are grasping at straws." So,
yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm somewhat confused. If we're having an effect, how is that having an effect on them? Because obviously, it's not like it's going to collapse Antiochian.
I don't think that it will, but I think that the fact that they're being held to account, because whether they like it or not, they literally do. And I mean, I hate to say it is the World Orthodoxy problem in a nutshell, but they like to present it as we are presenting the ancient Western Rite. And they're lying.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, he's open in the interview that we just accept these innovations because these were really faithful people, And really, you know, we have to fight secularism. And how are we going to do that if we reject these things?
If that's really their argument, I really don't know if it's going to be worth reviewing the entire hour.
I sort of thought it was going to be like an ecumenistic argument, and that's what it sounds like. I mean, I've heard that from them saying things like Aquinas has to be taken into account. And I was like, well, you know,
no, he doesn't.
Yeah, I know, of course he doesn't.
I mean, there's a lot that.
But remember, if the Antiochian Patriarchate has a communion agreement with condemned Syro-Jacobites, who have been condemned by an ecumenical council for 1,500 years.
That's a good point.
I mean, I think
it's like,
what else are they going? This is par for the course within that circumstance. I also think it has to do with the fact that if you ever spend any time or had any, at least had I had acquaintances in like continuing Anglicanism, which was where a lot of these people came from, that their bar of what they're willing to accept is actually very low. And what I mean by that is, as long as you don't have like women's ordination and gay marriage, they're like, oh well, I guess this is the apostolic faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now we are getting some. We are getting some questions for some reason, and these I'm gonna try to cover them. I'm gonna try to cover this real quick. But somebody said, I likewise, wow guy said, you know, sorry to jump again, but didn't St. Philaret ban the Western Rite in Roquefort? He did in 1978, I want to say. But the context of that is that they began introducing Anglican practices in the Antiochian Western Rite, and it was beginning to filter to Roquefort.
Among other issues,
yeah. So that's kind of why.
And it didn't get lifted until 2011 under Metropolitan Area.
And they brought back all the Anglican practices.
Not willingly.
I question how unwilling they were at that point.
If I could just say something though, it's like something with these people is it's that like he says like, oh, we're going to the medieval church and this is great and this is like counter secularism and all this stuff. And I've just noticed with this kind of thing, it's all about like preserving the West and sort of being based, you know, doing all these things. And it's sort of like it kind of reminds me of like, you know, the Israelites when they were, you know, trying to get Egypt to help them out, you know, like good, you know, big brother Egypt versus I think Babylon or whatever.
Yeah,
and God was like, and God's like, bro,
they're not the Israelites. They're
well,
just
but the point is that God's like, no, you need to repent. This is why this is happening, and that's the whole problem. Is like the world's being punished because of the lack of repentance, you know, of the church and the failing of the Orthodox nations. It's not because of like all the enlightenment, all that stuff's just like an effect of that, you know. And thinking we're gonna team up with everyone, you know.
Well, I think that's with the foundation of Roman Catholicism, the idea of individual interpretation and individual kind of reasoning as opposed to following the path of the fathers is what causes that.
And emotional spirituality.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Well, it all became.
I wonder sometimes
papism
whether Pentecostalism. Go ahead, Vladimir.
I'm just saying, papism simply became, after it took over in the West, became like an institutional structure. They have this gradual. It took centuries for it to filter down to everybody, but the idea was that the church was simply like a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And within that bureaucracy, they would allow a good deal of freedom as long as you submitted to the one guy who they claimed was the head of the church.
It's like a pyramid. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Pope is is supposed to be supreme, the head of the church, blah blah blah, all that other heresy. But then you're going to have like Franciscans and Dominicans holding like all kinds of opposite doctrinal positions, and allowed to fight each other for centuries over it. But it all exists under the oversight of the papacy, and that's also the plan that the papacy has introduced in the past few decades, where they were willing to give up numerous doctrinal issues for the sake of just people having this nominal adherence to the Pope as the head or something like that.
And then the Jesuits are going to blow it all up.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going to even. I think what they're looking for is this sort of just nominal headship of the Pope. And that he'll just allow everyone to do their thing, but they look at because remember, papism is ultimately about simply the Pope. That they claim he's the head of the church. They will sacrifice willingly any doctrinal position or stance in order to get people to recognize that.
Yeah, that's how the Ecumenists and Orthodoxy and Anglicanism are going to join with them.
Well, I mean, whatever's left of Anglican. I mean, the whole thing is just. I mean, in
But
England,
yeah,
it's already collapsed. In America, Canada. I mean, I know people going to like. It's a mess. It's like the mainline denominations in America.
Yeah.
You know, they're nearly completely collapsed.
I should say.
Did you see the local article about how the Anglican Church has denied now the use of the word church? Church of England.
In England, the communities, the faith communities they're going to talk about.
Did they already deny the divinity of Christ though a long time ago?
Well, you can believe whatever you want.
Yeah.
And be part of those organizations. And I think the one big scandal was that like the British government had given something like $700 million to the Church of England, and no one knows what happened to it.
Wow.
So,
I mean, aren't they the ones that have John Shelby's palm?
Yeah, that's the American Episcopal Church. That's their branch in the United States.
Yeah.
My point is that so what happens? They had like people who broke away from in the 70s over women's ordination, or what have you, and a lot of some of those people later joined the Antiochians. That's the Antiochians approving the Anglican usages in like 77 were a result of anticipating this mass exodus of American Episcopalians who rejected women's ordination. And they never got really they never really got that many people, but they got enough financially to justify the situation.
Didn't some of those splinter groups eventually sign on to women's ordination though?
I mean, of the continuing Anglicans, if they were actual continuing Anglicans from the St. Louis Congress in 77, they would not have.
Okay.
What's true is there's something called ACNA in America, which is back in 2010. There was like something a third of the Episcopal Church's parishes. That's as the mainline Episcopal Church broke away and formed the Anglican Church in North America.
Right, yeah, that's the one that Jonah talked to.
Yeah, and exactly. But they technically leave it up to each diocese to whether to have women priests or not. So what makes them conservative, supposedly, is they just don't have gay marriage. And you got to believe Christ rose from the dead. I mean, it's a very minimalistic understanding of things at this point. But I think why they accept that is, remember, most of these Anglicans, people who don't understand is they don't have an understanding of like priesthood like we do. All right, they think of priesthood as like just like a Lutheran pastor or a preacher who gets put on some robes, maybe. They don't have this adherence to the only reason they claim they have apostolic. Yeah, the only reason they claim they have something like apostolic succession is based upon the idea that they want to do ecumenism with like Roman Catholics, who don't accept them as having apostolic succession anyway, but they want to at least make the claim.
Yeah, I noticed when I was in England, they kind of gave a lip service to intercession of the saints too.
Well, you don't have. I mean, and it's absurd because up until like the 1850s, almost no Anglican would have believed you could ask the petition of the saints. Maybe you could have found one person here or there in private. William Forbes in Scotland in like 1610 or something like that. It was extremely minority view, and they really consider themselves a reformed, almost Calvinistic church for a very long time. And it's only since the Tractarian and the ritualist movement of the 1850s that they really began to say, "Oh, we can wear vestments now instead of just like a black robe or like a Geneva gown or something like that, or maybe a surplice or something." So a lot of that's like a creation of the late 19th century.
How long have they had the? Because I noticed this a lot when I was overseas. The St. Peter's crosses, I guess is what they call it because it's upside down.
St. Peter's cross.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time I've ever heard of St. Peter's cross is St. Peter was crucified upside down, according to the martyrology.
Yeah, but you actually see that on some of their buildings where it's upside down.
It's possible. I mean, the only time I've ever seen it was that over the tomb of St. Peter, in like under Rome. And
I've seen that. Yeah,
that's the most I've ever seen it. I don't know, because obviously you can have people, the Satanists use that as their image as well.
Correct.
I don't think they have this, though. Of course, I don't think they're doing it because they're honoring St. Peter. Obviously,
yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, because to them it's just an inversion of Christ and such, and what have you. But no, that's that situation, and I mean, I think like in any kind of religious structures, like so-called Christian structures in in the UK are just constantly collapsing in membership.
Well,
although Islam is doing rather well over there.
It's funny. The main cathedral for the Anglicans there, I think it's called St. Paul's.
In London.
They literally have a revolving door.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Well, I mean, let's look at the continental Europe. France, all the continental Roman Catholic countries has extremely low church attendance rates.
Yeah.
Even countries that historically have a connection to Orthodoxy, even if they're not really anymore, like Greece or Romania, Romania is actually not that bad, but Greece is like 18-20% of the total population goes to church. Russia, it's like 0.5%. People oftentimes are deceived because they look at Moscow and they see all these people on a feast. You're dealing with something different there. I think the last time they took a statistic, something like 2% of the population went to services on nativity in Russia.
Well, it's like
Ukraine is rather similar as well. It's not like they're more religious.
Well, it's like
though Romania has something like 45% church attendance rates. It's actually rather high.
Well, it's like St. Peter's Basilica when I was over there. So they have like a side entrance for people that can attend that use that as their, I guess, parish. And if you actually see how many people attended, it's in a very small side chapel with there's a lot of room because there's not a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the whole religious structures in Europe are more or less collapsing. At this point.
Yeah.
But it's not being replaced. But it's not necessarily being replaced by people becoming like atheists. I mean, some of them are. But I think a lot of it's like Islam coming into the area.
Well, I would just say most of them, from what I've noticed, are just nihilists. They don't believe in anything anymore.
Yeah. So it's not even like they're Marxist atheists with this ideology about the world and what have you. They just don't believe in anything, and you see that with like the below replacement level birth rates and such.
Yeah.
So that they're gonna end within a few decades.
Yeah, it was just crazy because I had been there in 2013, and you couldn't even get near the tomb of St. Peter. And then I was there earlier this summer, and I was like right up there, right up close to the tomb. And there's like
you visited Europe recently?
Yeah, in June. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like right there, and there was like barely anybody next to me. I was like, wow, this is different. And that was just 11 years difference. So.
Although, what's strange was listening to a program about this that like in like Brazil, for example, right? Like the Roman Catholic Church, it's decreased in membership in Brazil, and it's basically been replaced by, not totally, but by evangelicals and charismatic Pentecostals. Such. I remember back in 2011, I was waiting outside of a train station after coming back from North Carolina, and I was waiting to get picked up to come back to the monastery, and I had my my priest cross on and everything, and I was accosted by a group of Brazilian Pentecostals. And then they saw the cross and they didn't like that. Then Vladimir John came to pick me up, and he got out of the car and he had the Panagia. Then one of them fell down and fell into the mouth and said, "Now Maria," and they did as he looked out the Panagia, and then they carried him off into the shadows.
Wow.
So I mean that was like really, really, really strange to say the least. Obviously. So
Okay, so.
Okay, I'm not to go no more, but we got to go, right, Father?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say the stream is down. It's 45th minute of the third hour. I'm gonna cut it off here. I mean, unless somebody wants to donate a whole lot of money because I'm really broke. But otherwise, I'm gonna end the stream real quick because it can go on longer. And
sorry, Father.
But no worries. But I want to thank everyone who participated. I want to thank all our guests. I want to thank everyone who was on the panel. And, have a great night, everyone. And through the prayers of the Holy Fathers of Jesus Christ, our God, mercy us and save us. And I'm $100 for a 24-hour stream. No.
Go ahead.
Up that by 10. Up that by 10.
I'll think about it.
1,000 for you do 1,000, you get a 24-hour stream. Okay, I will stay up. All right.
Move the camera into the church for all the services too. So
Okay,
it'll be like a continuously following you
It'll be like
around.
live stream. There'll be times where just
Father Joseph body cam.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a great night, everyone. God bless you. Enjoy the evening.